Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this what if story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by 𝗵𝗲_𝗧𝗔𝗂𝘗𝗵𝐴 on Wattpad. Now let's start. A young man sprinted through the woods under the cover of night, his clothes torn and his skin marred with bruises and scars that told a story of years of hardship. The sound of quiet sobs escaped him as he pushed deeper into the forest, ignoring the sharp branches that scraped against him. Despite his exhaustion and the burning in his lungs, he pressed on, driven by the fear of those pursuing him. His journey began with a life-altering moment at the doctor's office. The doctor delivered the news that would change everything. The young boy was quirkless. Shock washed over him, and his beloved all-might action figure slipped from his grasp, hitting the floor. His sister, Izumi, looked at him in silence, grappling with the reality that their shared dreams were now out of reach. But the doctor offered a glimmer of hope, revealing that Izumi possessed a powerful telekinesis quirk, one that could surpass even his own. Overjoyed, Inko lifted Izumi into the air, celebrating her daughter's potential, while Izuku remained behind, feeling the weight of disappointment. The doctor, noticing Izuku's distress, tried to uplift him with kind words, suggesting that heroism was not solely about strength or flashy abilities but about doing what was right. This encouragement sparked a flicker of hope in Izuku, and he left the office with a renewed spirit, rushing to join his family. However, the doctor's smile faded as he watched the boy disappear, wishing for a brighter future for him. Later, the family returned home, where Tashinori greeted them with a warm smile. Inko excitedly shared the news of Izumi's quirk, but her expression shifted when Tashinori inquired about Izuku. The joy in Inko's face dimmed as she revealed the truth. Izuku was quirkless. Tashinori's heart sank at the word, feeling as if it were a heavy burden to bear. Just then, Izumi burst into the room, her excitement palpable as she announced her newfound ability. Izuku entered, greeting his father, but Tashinori was too caught up in celebrating Izumi to acknowledge him. The family rushed out to celebrate, leaving Izuku standing alone, confusion and sadness etched on his face. Izumi's smile towards him was not one of kindness but rather one of superiority. As Izuku watched his family leave without him, tears streamed down his cheeks. He slowly retreated to his room, where he sat on his bed, grappling with despair. He questioned whether his dreams of becoming a hero were now forever out of reach. The weight of feeling powerless and weak pressed down on him, leaving him feeling hopeless. His gaze fell on his computer, still on from earlier. He approached it and found an interview with All Might, paused at the moment before their quirk appointment. Sitting down, he pressed play and watched as All Might spoke about heroism. The words resonated with him, emphasizing that true heroism is about the will to make a difference, regardless of one's abilities. Hope began to stir within him once more, and admiration for his idol filled his heart. With a smile on his face, he drifted off to sleep, determined that tomorrow would be a new day. The next day, Izumi sat on a bench in the park, watching Izuku play in the sandbox. Since learning of his quirkless status, she struggled to accept that her brother lacked a quirk. It frustrated her, feeling burdened by the weight of their shattered dreams. Yet, she also felt a twinge of concern that this might not deter his aspirations of becoming a hero. Suddenly, she heard a familiar voice calling her name. It was Katsuki Bakugo, accompanied by his sister Katsumi and the Todoroki twins. They excitedly showcased their quirks, explosions from the Bakugos and a combination of fire and ice from the Todorokis. Izumi, filled with pride, demonstrated her telekinesis, impressing her friends, especially Bakugo, who admired her. Curiosity sparked in Katsumi as she asked about Izuku's quirk. The question caught Izumi off guard, and she looked down, feeling a mix of fear and shame. Shoka noticed her discomfort and tilted her head in confusion, asking if something was wrong. Izumi struggled to find her voice, caught between fear and embarrassment, unable to respond. She struggled to find her voice. Was she afraid of revealing the secret, or was she ashamed of having a sibling without powers? Katsumi expressed her concern about Izuku, prompting Izumi to take a deep breath. With a heavy heart, she shared the truth about her brother. Izuku was quirkless. The revelation hung in the air, leaving her friends in shock. Bakugo blinked in disbelief, Katsumi's eyes widened, Shoka tilted her head in confusion, and Todoroki's expression turned serious. They had thought Izumi was joking, but the look on her face told them otherwise. The reality was clear: their friend lacked a quirk. Izumi glanced at her friends, her voice trembling as she confessed her fears. She was genuinely worried for Izuku, knowing he would never abandon his dream of becoming a hero. The thought of him facing a villain filled her with dread, and she desperately wished to protect him from harm. Shoka murmured her name softly, while Bakugo, harboring feelings for Izumi, pondered how to help her. An idea struck him, and he proposed a plan to steer Izuku away from his heroic aspirations. Bakugo suggested that they bully Izuku into giving up on becoming a hero. The others looked at him incredulously, as if he had suggested something outrageous. Izumi was taken aback by his suggestion, adamantly opposing the idea of hurting her brother. Bakugo insisted it would be harmless, teasing that both Shoka and Katsumi had crushes on him, causing the girls to blush. Conflicted, Izumi felt torn between her longing to protect Izuku and the troubling notion of bullying him into esping. Shoto, initially hesitant, eventually decided to join in. Just then, they spotted Izuku running toward them, cheerfully calling out to his friends. They remained silent, watching him approach with a smile. In a sudden move, Bakugo lunged at Izuku, using his quirk to create an explosion that sent him tumbling to the ground. Izuku, bewildered, questioned Bakugo's actions, but received only harsh words in return. The others joined in, shoving and taunting him, while Izumi used her quirk to push him away. They called him names, mocking his lack of a quirk, and Bakugo suggested a cruel nickname that meant defenseless. Izuku, overwhelmed, tried to escape but found himself restrained. As he cried out in distress, Izumi felt a mix of emotions, battling between her sense of loyalty and the darkness of the situation. Despite her discomfort, she found herself caught up in the moment, witnessing her brother's struggle. After their torment, Izumi released him, and he fell to the ground, bruised and in tears. She delivered a harsh reminder of his supposed failure, leaving him in a daze as he began to lose consciousness. Izuku's eyes fluttered open to the bright light of the nurse's office. The nurse, relieved to see him awake, explained that he had been found unconscious and brought in for care. She inquired about what had happened, and after some hesitation he shared the truth. The nurse listened intently, her expression shifting from concern to anger at the treatment he had received from his friends and sister. She reassured him that being quirkless did not define him and encouraged him to pursue his dreams of becoming a hero. Feeling a mix of sadness and gratitude, Izuku hugged the nurse, who returned the embrace warmly. After they parted, he left the office, heading home. Arriving, he heard voices from inside. It was his parents. Expecting a warm welcome, he was instead met with disappointment. Inko and Tashinori stood with arms crossed beside a tearful Izumi, who had painted a different picture of events. Inko demanded an explanation, and despite Izuku's protests, they accused him of bullying his sister. When he continued to deny it, Inko's frustration boiled over, leading to a harsh reprimand. Izuku walked to his room, feeling the sting of his mother's words and the betrayal of his sister, who watched with a smirk. As he lay on his bed, tears streamed down his face. He couldn't comprehend how his family had chosen to believe Izumi over him. Despite the challenges he faced, the young man remained hopeful, preparing for bed with the thought that tomorrow would bring new opportunities. 10 years later, Izuku Midoriya had endured a difficult life. He had been ridiculed by classmates, subjected to harsh treatment that left him feeling defeated, and faced psychological torment from his own sister. His so-called friends had turned against him, physically assaulting him both before and after school. His parents were not much better, often neglecting him and punishing him for things he hadn't done, leaving him to fend for himself and expressing disappointment in him. Most individuals who experienced such abuse might have given up, but Izuku was different. His strong will and unwavering longing to become a hero kept him going. Over time, his bullies grew frustrated that he remained unbroken by their actions. 𝗧𝗏𝗃 and 𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 had become accustomed to the bullying, deriving pleasure from his suffering. Bakugo was relentless, seizing every opportunity to torment him. Shota would use his quirks on Izuku during and after classes, leaving him feeling both burned and chilled. However, Izumi was the most relentless of all, bullying him without pause, often pushing him to his limits and taking pleasure in his pain. Izumi had transformed into an arrogant and spoiled individual, praised by those around her and training diligently with her parents, which only fueled her belief that she was the best. Throughout school, teachers often overlooked Izuku, ignoring his presence and pleas for help while he was harassed. Occasionally, a teacher would extend a small gesture of kindness when he found himself in trouble. This day, however, would be different. The teacher entered the classroom, weary from a long day, and instructed the students to settle down. He announced that as the school year was coming to an end, each student was to write a summary of their future plans. The class groaned in response, but the teacher smiled and tossed papers into the air, prompting cheers from the students as they began to use their quirks, except for Izumi, the Todoroki twins, and the Bakugo twins. The teacher reminded the class that quirk usage was prohibited in school zones. Bakugo, leaning back in his chair with a cocky grin, declared that he was destined for greatness, drawing annoyed reactions from his classmates. 𝗏𝗧𝗵𝗲 sighed in frustration at her brother's antics, while Shota and Shota remained silent. Izumi watched the scene unfold with a hint of amusement. The teacher then addressed Bakugo and his friends, confirming their applications to UA. The students murmured among themselves. He then called out Izuku's name, and the classroom fell silent, tension hanging in the air. Laughter erupted when Bakugo, furious, sent Izuku flying off his desk with a blast, angrily demanding to know why he would even consider applying to UA. Before Izuku could respond, Izumi grabbed him and hurled him against the wall, disdain evident in her voice as she questioned his ambitions. The teacher intervened, warning them both to settle down or face detention. Reluctantly, they returned to their seats as class resumed. At the end of the day, Izuku was quick to leave, eager to avoid Izumi and her friends. He sought refuge near Mustadafa's national forest, a place where he could find peace away from the torment. With his hair casting shadows over his eyes, Izuku clenched his fists, teeth gritted. For a decade, he had endured a relentless cycle of torment, struggling to suppress his hatred for those who bullied him. The voices of his tormentors echoed in his mind, reminding him of his perceived worthlessness. In a moment of frustration, he struck a nearby tree, feeling the sting in his knuckles as he knelt in pain. As he closed his eyes, tears threatened to spill. Suddenly, he felt something wrap around his injured hand. Opening his eyes, he was startled to see a branch from the tree gently encircling him. Initially frightened, he was taken aback when he noticed a warm glow enveloping his hand. The branch withdrew, revealing that his wound had healed. Astonished, Izuku looked at the tree, which seemed to offer a friendly gesture. The gentle breeze and swaying grass appeared to guide him deeper into the forest. Hesitant yet curious, he followed the path. As he ventured further, he realized this forest was unlike any he had encountered before. It felt vibrant and alive. The path led him to an open field where a rock sat in the center. Intrigued, Izuku approached and discovered a scroll hidden beneath it. He picked it up, feeling the thin, dusty paper, and began to unravel it, hoping for something meaningful. To his disappointment, the scroll was blank, the writing long faded. Izuku let out a sigh, pondering what he had expected. The paper before him began to glow, revealing a symbol that captivated his attention. Curiosity took over as he reached for the paper, only to feel a sharp sensation pierce his hand. He dropped the scroll, which started to shake violently. The ground trembled beneath him, and Izuku struggled to maintain his balance as it quaked like an earthquake. Suddenly, the earth began to crumble, and a temple emerged from beneath the surface. Izuku could hardly believe his eyes. Thinking it was a dream, he pinched himself, but nothing changed. He approached the temple and stepped inside, where he found the architecture crafted entirely from wood. The pillars were symmetrically aligned, and shelves were filled with books and scrolls. In the center, an insignia stood above an open scroll. As he drew closer, he noticed the writing was in a language he could not comprehend. His eyes sparkled as he scanned the text, stopping at the strange symbol below. Hoping for something to happen, he touched the symbol, but nothing occurred. Frustrated, he began to tap on it, and suddenly, a puff of smoke erupted from the scroll. Coughing from the surprise, he opened his eyes wide to the sight before him. A man appeared to be in his late 30s to 40s, wearing a headband with a leaf symbol etched into the metal. His dark red armor was made of numerous metal plates, and he wore sandals. The man's hollow eyes regarded Izuku with an unreadable expression, and the atmosphere grew tense under his presence. The man greeted Izuku with a goofy smile, which contrasted sharply with his earlier cold demeanor. Izuku felt perplexed by the sudden shift in the man's expression. He hesitated before asking who the man was. The man introduced himself as Hashirama Senju, leader of the Senju clan and the first Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village. Izuku's mind raced as he recalled having heard of that village before. Meanwhile, Izuku was seen running through the school hallway, desperately trying to escape his tormentors. Spotting another hallway, he seized the opportunity and slid into the library. He hid behind some bookshelves, catching his breath. After a few moments, he decided to leave his hiding spot, opting to stay in the library rather than face his parents. As he searched for books, none piqued his interest. Many were either familiar, unappealing, or related to topics he had already studied, such as evolution of quirks and how to make your quirk stronger. However, one book caught his eye, The Era of the Shinobi World. He took it from the shelf, placing it on the table, and dust rose from it, indicating it hadn't been touched in a long time. Blowing the dust away, he began reading and quickly became fascinated by the content: the Great Clan Era, the 5 Great Nations, the Kage's representations, chakra, various clans, and the 4 Great Ninja Wars. Suddenly, a voice startled him, causing him to yelp and throw the book. A woman in her late 40s to 50s caught the book with a chuckle, apologizing for startling him. She had brown hair tied in a bun and wore a librarian's uniform. She glanced at the book and remarked on its subject matter, questioning his interest in such ancient history. Izuku expressed his surprise that no history class had covered this part of the past. The librarian shrugged, suggesting that perhaps people preferred to learn about heroes, quirks, and the symbol of peace. Izuku asked if he could borrow the book, promising to return it. The librarian waved her hand dismissively, allowing him to keep it. Stunned, he questioned whether that would be considered stealing, but she assured him that no one knew the book existed, so he was welcome to take it. Back in the temple, Hashirama called out to Izuku, pulling him from his thoughts. Izuku looked at him, confused, and expressed his disbelief that Hashirama was still alive. Hashirama laughed, explaining that he was not actually present in the physical sense. Izuku was taken aback, trying to process this revelation. Hashirama clarified that he was merely a spirit, having placed some of his chakra and life energy into the scroll in hopes that someone from his lineage would find it. Izuku blinked in astonishment, realizing that no one else could enter the shrine. Hashirama confirmed that only someone from his lineage could access this place, and that person was Izuku. Stunned, Izuku grappled with the idea that he belonged to an ancient clan. He began to wonder about his ancestry, ruling out his stepfather, Toshinori, and his mother, Inko. The only person left was his biological father, Hisashi Midoriya, who had died in the line of duty during a villain attack. Hashirama then inquired about the passage of time and whether peace had been restored to the world or if another catastrophe had occurred. Izuku sighed, contemplating the weight of the questions posed to him. Izuku had a lot to explain. He had shared with Hashirama that the era of Shinobi had faded long ago, giving way to a new age marked by quirks and the rise of heroes. He introduced himself and spoke about his family situation. Hashirama regarded him with a solemn expression, acknowledging the hardships Izuku had faced. He noted that Izuku's strength of will, despite everything, revealed his determination. Hashirama began to form hand signs but paused when the room trembled. The wall cracked open, unveiling a hidden staircase. He invited his descendant to join him for training. Weeks had passed since Izuku Yagi's disappearance. No one had noticed he was gone, his parents were unaware of his absence, and his relatives rarely visited due to their busy lives. His so-called friends were indifferent, believing he had finally learned his lesson. Izumi, however, felt relieved by his absence. To her, Izuku was a burden, an obstacle in her path. With him out of the way, she could pursue her dream of becoming a hero. On Izumi's birthday, Inko and Toshinori celebrated her special day with enthusiasm. As they congratulated her, Toshinori stood up, cleared his throat, and caught her attention. He was soon enveloped in smoke, revealing his true form as All Might. He congratulated Izumi, who was in awe of the hero she had idolized for years. All Might then decided it was time to share the truth about One for All, a quirk passed down through generations to combat the villain All for One, a powerful adversary who sought to conquer the world. He placed a hand on Izumi's shoulder, expressing that it was time for the next successor to achieve what he could not. They agreed to keep this revelation a secret until the rest of the family arrived for the birthday celebration. Izumi was overjoyed, feeling that everything was finally going her way. She left the apartment to join her parents in preparing for the best party ever. In the weeks that followed, Izuku trained diligently under Hashirama's guidance. Their training began slowly, focusing on developing a tactical mindset. Hashirama taught him how to handle various crisis scenarios, including ambushes and teamwork. The second week involved practicing against movable dummies, where Izuku faced challenges but gradually improved, ultimately breaking one of the dummies with a powerful punch. By the third week, Izuku was lifting weights and boulders, doing push-ups with added weight, and running with weights tied to him. His training intensified, pushing him to build strength, stamina, and endurance. The fourth week brought sparring matches, where Hashirama proved to be a formidable opponent. He did not hold back, delivering swift punches and kicks that tested Izuku's resilience. Despite the pain, Izuku refused to back down. He learned to dodge and counter Hashirama's attacks, adapting to his movements. Each match brought new challenges, and Izuku grew stronger with each encounter. He executed a roundhouse kick, only to be met with Hashirama's quick recovery. The two engaged in a fierce exchange, their fists connecting in a flurry of strikes. As they faced off, the tension in the air was palpable. They charged at each other, fists colliding as they unleashed a barrage of attacks. Izuku swept Hashirama off his feet, but the shinobi quickly regained his balance and retaliated with a powerful kick to Izuku's chest, sending him to the ground. Izuku coughed, struggling to catch his breath, but he was determined to rise again. With each match, Izuku's skills sharpened, and he learned to anticipate Hashirama's movements. He executed a roundhouse kick to the back of Hashirama's head, showcasing his growth and determination. The training was grueling, but Izuku was committed to becoming stronger, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Izuku swiftly launched a punch toward Hashirama, but his hand was caught. In a quick motion, Izuku lifted his body, his lower half landing behind him while his upper body propelled Hashirama into the air. He then appeared behind Hashirama, unleashing a flurry of kicks to his chest before delivering a powerful uppercut to his jaw. Grabbing hold of Hashirama, Izuku sent him spiraling downward, heading towards the ground. Hashirama retaliated with a jab to Izuku's left shoulder, causing him to loosen his grip just enough for Hashirama to break free. In the struggle, he dislocated Izuku's shoulder before seizing his right arm as they descended. Izuku grunted in pain as his head struck the solid ground. He would have been knocked out if not for the rigorous training he endured daily. Lifting his face, he revealed a bloodied nose and mouth, yet his determination shone through. Using his BLD as a distraction, he smeared some on his hand and flicked it into Hashirama's eyes, temporarily blinding him. Seizing the moment, Izuku delivered a jab to Hashirama's right ribs, eliciting a grunt before landing a powerful punch to his face, sending Hashirama crashing to the ground. As Hashirama quickly regained his footing, the two continued to exchange blows, each man blocking and attacking in a relentless dance. After a moment, they stepped back, breathing as they caught their breath. Soon, they charged at each other for one final clash. Hashirama aimed a hard jab at Izuku's face, but Izuku stood firm, summoning his strength to strike Hashirama in the gut, causing him to cough. With a final blow to Hashirama's face, he sent him crashing into the wall, creating a small hole. For the first time, Izuku emerged victorious, having unleashed his powerful attack. Smoke filled the air, and once it cleared, Hashirama was seen staring at the ground before lifting his head to meet Izuku's gaze. A proud smirk adorned Hashirama's face, reminiscent of a teacher pleased with his student's progress. He congratulated Izuku on passing all the training tests and informed him that they would begin unlocking his chakra the following day. Izuku smiled as he relocated his dislocated shoulder, expressing his gratitude to his sensei. Hashirama exited the crater, beckoning Izuku to follow him. Confused, Izuku complied as Hashirama opened a door to a room decorated for a celebration. A table was set with party decorations, a homemade cake, and drinks. Izuku was taken aback by the sight and looked to Hashirama for an explanation. Noticing Izuku's expression, Hashirama explained that he had prepared the celebration in honor of Izuku's upcoming birthday. Stunned, Izuku recalled his childhood, where his own birthday had gone uncelebrated while his sister received all the attention. Overwhelmed with emotion, he shed tears for the first time in a long while as he hugged Hashirama tightly, who returned the embrace warmly. In the Yagi household, everyone had gathered to celebrate Izumi's birthday, including the Bakugos, Todorokis, Grand Torino, Night Eye, Aizawa, Nizu, the UA staff, and Detective 𝗧𝗵𝗄𝗁. Toshinori thanked everyone for attending and wished his daughter a happy birthday as applause filled the room. Izumi beamed with joy alongside her friends. However, Mitsuki noticed one person was missing and turned to Inko, asking where Izuku was. Inko responded with confusion, claiming not to know who Izuku was. Mitsuki blinked in disbelief, thinking it was a joke, but Inko insisted she had no son. Izumi and her friends exchanged nervous glances, realizing they had forgotten about Deku, thinking he had run away unnoticed. Aizawa stepped forward, his expression serious as he questioned Inko about not remembering her own son. Inko remained adamant, causing disbelief among the group. Aizawa hurried to the stairs, heading toward Izuku's door, with everyone following closely behind. He knocked on the door, calling out to Izuku, but received no response. Knocking again, he still heard silence. Attempting to open the door, Aizawa was surprised to find it locked, which was unusual since the knobs lacked locks. He demanded to know why the door was locked, while Inko and Toshinori shrugged in confusion. Izumi and her friends were visibly anxious. Meanwhile, Night Eye examined a family album, flipping through pictures that depicted Izuku and Izumi together during their childhood. Each page revealed a pattern of Izuku being overshadowed by his sister, raising concern in Night Eye's heart. Suddenly, Aizawa's voice rang out, calling for Endeavor to help break down the door. A loud crash echoed through the air, prompting Night Eye and the others to rush toward the noise. Their eyes widened in shock as they entered the room, revealing a stark and desolate space. The room was devoid of furniture, save for a mattress and a desk. The walls were peeling, mold was present, and the air felt thick and cold. What shocked everyone were the bloody bandages and medical supplies scattered across the desk. Inko turned to Rei, who glared at her, demanding to know where Izuku's room was. As Inko finally recalled her son, she stared in horror at the room, unable to comprehend what she was seeing. Rei's voice was heavy with anger as she pointed out that this was not a child's room. It should have been filled with warmth and comfort, not abandoned and neglected. Hound Dog entered the room, sniffing the air, adding to the tension of the moment. It seemed that this room had not been used for quite some time. He glanced down at the bandages stained with red and picked them up, taking a careful sniff. By his estimation, they had been there for 2 to 3 weeks. Nizu moved toward the desk, hoping to uncover some clues. He discovered a drawer beneath the desk, and upon opening it, he found a journal. As he opened the journal and began to read its contents, he was struck by the most appalling revelations he had ever encountered. The journal began with a greeting, stating that if someone was reading it, they had found the author's words. The author identified himself as Izuku Yagi, describing his life as a continuous nightmare. Ever since being diagnosed as quirkless, he had endured relentless bullying, both physical and mental, from his own sister and her friends. His parents had shunned and abused him, ridiculing him for things he never did, and he had been targeted at school from kindergarten all the way to 𝗎𝗪𝗢. The next page detailed every aspect of his life, including his scars, the abuse he suffered, the bandages he used, and the meticulous records of the physical and mental torment inflicted upon him by his sister and her friends. 𝗧𝗍 turned to the next page, which illustrated everything the previous page had described. His paws trembled with rage as he closed the journal and looked toward Tashinori, who had remained silent throughout the ordeal. 𝗧𝗍's gaze was piercing as he addressed Tashinori, who turned to him, confusion etched on his face. 𝗧𝗍's voice was cold and bitter as he asked if it was true that Tashinori and 𝗵𝗃 had abused Izuku and had intentionally forgotten about him. Tashinori was stunned, his expression one of disbelief. 𝗵𝗃, filled with anger, directed a fierce glare at Tashinori and 𝗵𝗃, demanding to know if the accusations were true. 𝗵𝗃 vehemently denied the claims, her voice rising in outrage as she confronted 𝗧𝗍, furious at the accusation. 𝗧𝗏𝗁, unable to contain himself, interjected, stating that both parents were lying. The atmosphere grew tense as everyone directed their glares at Tashinori and 𝗵𝗃. 𝗧𝗍 then shifted his attention to the 5 teenagers present, who flinched under his intense gaze. He accused them of being involved from the very beginning, tormenting Izuku, using their quirks against him, and mocking him alongside their classmates. 𝗧𝗍 questioned how they could have done such things. Mitsuki and Misuru looked at their children in horror, unable to believe what they were hearing. Rei's expression mirrored their shock and disgust, while 𝗵𝗃's disappointment was palpable. Shoka protested that they were trying to protect Izuku, but 𝗧𝗍 challenged her, asking what they were protecting him from. Katsumi shouted that if Izuku pursued his dream of becoming a hero, he could be seriously harmed or even killed. Shoto claimed they had acted only to help him. Bakugo and Izumi remained silent, their expressions blank. Bakugo struggled to find words, while Izumi's silence was filled with rage, her hands clenched into tight fists. Detective 𝗧𝗏𝗁 approached them, his face reflecting anger. He warned them about the laws they had broken, stating they were fortunate to be teenagers, otherwise they would be facing severe consequences. Katsumi, Shoka, and Shoto stood in shock, while Bakugo wore an angry expression, though he flinched slightly. Izumi's face was hidden beneath her hair, her hands balled into fists, turning white from the pressure as she gritted her teeth in fury. 𝗧𝗍 glared at 𝗵𝗃 and Tashinori, who flinched under his scrutiny. He expressed that he could have them arrested but lamented that Japan needed its number 1 hero and 11th heroes, especially with crime rates rising. He outlined the consequences. Both would lose 70% of their paychecks, their hero time would be cut by 80%, and they would have to report to his office daily as teachers. As for the 5 teenagers, they would be required to complete 24 hours of community service, wear ankle monitors and quirk collars to prevent them from using their powers, and visit a psychiatrist every afternoon. 𝗧𝗍 reminded them to be grateful they were not facing prison time. Aizawa, incredulous, argued that 𝗧𝗍's punishment was far too lenient for the heinous offenses committed. 𝗧𝗍 sighed, understanding Aizawa's concerns but feeling he had no other choice. He explained that if villains learned of All Might and Magnetic's arrest, crime would escalate. This was the only option available. Despite the disagreements and debates, they ultimately accepted 𝗧𝗍's decision. The teenagers were handcuffed as they were taken to juvenile detention. Shoka and Katsumi wore expressions of sadness, while Shoto kept his head down, solemn. Bakugo stared at the ground, refusing to look up, and Izumi's face was shadowed by her hair, her hands clenched tightly into fists, her jaw set in determination. She swore that when Izuku returned from wherever he had gone, she would end his life once and for all. Time, she believed, would not heal her wounds, it would only teach her to live with the pain. Izuku was in a resting position, sitting cross-legged and meditating. He was channeling an aura of chakra throughout his body, his energy calm like nature itself. Remarkably, he had unlocked his chakra in just 4 days, a feat that Hashirama noted usually took weeks. The two had been practicing his chakra network, learning and creating jutsu, which Izuku mastered in a week. He was indeed a prodigy. When Izuku opened his eyes, his bright green pupils scanned the room, landing on Hashirama, who was smiling at him. Hashirama congratulated Izuku on completing his training, and the young man beamed with joy. Suddenly, Hashirama's legs began to buckle, and he dropped to one knee, gasping for air before coughing violently. Izuku rushed to his teacher's side, holding him steady and gently guiding him to a wall. Concerned, Izuku asked what was wrong. Hashirama, weakly, informed him that his time in this world was coming to an end, as the energy he had placed there was beginning to fade. Izuku's eyes widened in disbelief, tears welling up as he processed the reality that his mentor, his father figure, would soon be gone forever. Hashirama wiped away Izuku's tears and took his hand, looking at him with a proud smile. He urged Izuku not to cry, assuring him that he would always be by his side. He expressed his wish for Izuku to stay safe and to pursue his goals. As Hashirama dissipated into particles of energy, Izuku continued to hold his hand until it vanished completely. His head drooped slightly as tears trickled down his face. After a moment of sniffles, he regained his composure. Wiping away his tears, he stood up and set off toward his destination, the entrance exam for UA. He silently vowed to his father that he would make him proud. Over the course of 10 months, UA began its entrance exam for the new generation of heroes. Students from various schools and cities gathered to participate, eager to enter Japan's most prestigious school. While the teachers prepared to assess the students' strength and intellect, some were displeased with certain candidates. Among them were the Bakugo twins, the Todoroki twins, and primarily Izumi Yagi. Following their arrest, the twins faced court to hear their judgment. Due to their age at the time, they were charged as minors and received a light sentence of 10 months in jail, 24 hours of community service, and monthly psychiatric evaluations. Reactions to the sentence varied. Some felt it was too lenient, while others believed it was fair. The parents and siblings of the twins largely neglected to check on them, with the exception of the Yagi family, who only sent a disownment letter. As they began their time, the psychiatric evaluations revealed the twins' state of mind. The Todoroki twins expressed guilt over their actions against Izuku. Shoko was particularly emotional, acknowledging her wrongdoing and wishing to make amends. The psychiatrist believed they were capable of resuming their dreams of becoming heroes. The Bakugo twins, initially brash, displayed signs of guilt over time. Katsumi lamented her actions, calling herself a monster and expressing a longing to apologize to Izuku. Bakugo, typically self-absorbed, began to show slight remorse. Their behaviors needed daily monitoring, but the results remained consistent. They had potential to become heroes if they matured. However, the reports regarding Izumi Yagi raised suspicions. Over the past 10 months, her attitude had not improved. In fact, it seemed to worsen. The official documents described her as a narcissist, lacking empathy, and unrepentant for her actions against Izuku. The psychiatrist deemed her a danger to society and suggested she be placed in a mental institution or prison. Unfortunately, these reports never reached Nizu or the teachers, as Toshinori and Inko bribed Izumi's psychiatrists to fabricate false evaluations, claiming she was remorseful and should continue her pursuit of becoming a hero. Nizu, unconvinced by the report, felt powerless to act without evidence of the forgery. Reluctantly, he had no choice but to allow Izumi to participate in the entrance exam. The 5 teens entered one of the examination rooms and took their seats. Present Mike energetically explained the details of the test, but was interrupted by a student with glasses who pointed out an important detail he had missed regarding one of the exam robots. Shoko's mind wandered, ignoring the commotion around her. Her gaze drifted from student to student until it landed on a particular individual. He had long, straight green hair that reached halfway down his back. His expression was neutral, his dark green eyes hiding a flicker of intensity as he focused on Present Mike. He wore a brown hoodie, black briefs, and black shoes. Shoko felt a strange familiarity with this stranger. Perhaps it was his resemblance to her crush or his striking green hair. A wave of discomfort washed over her as she recalled her past actions toward him. As she continued to observe him, their eyes met, and she quickly looked away, fearing he had noticed her staring. The student with glasses then turned his attention to Bakugo, who had been glaring since his arrival. He advised 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗁 to reconsider his attitude if he wished to pursue a career as a hero. 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗁, annoyed, was about to retort when his sister intervened. 𝗵𝗃 announced that the exam was about to begin and instructed everyone to head to their designated buses. The students made their way to the buses, some nervous, others excited or calm. They arrived at their destination, they stood or stretched, preparing for the exam to commence. The boy with green hair was minding his own business when he noticed a girl his age with long green hair adorned with thorn-like decorations. She stood with her hands folded, eyes closed, and head tilted slightly upward as she gazed at the sky. Curious, he approached her, but was halted by the same boy from earlier, who blocked his path with a stern expression. He questioned the boy's intentions, to which the green-haired student replied that he simply wanted to offer her some inspirational advice. The boy with glasses insisted that he would be interrupting her and jeopardizing her chances of becoming a hero. The green-haired boy frowned at the accusation, calling him a hypocrite. This response left the boy with glasses momentarily speechless, his expression shifting as he regained his composure. How could he be a hypocrite? He judged people based on their appearances, assessing their personalities before truly knowing them, and acting as if they didn't belong. The boy was about to respond, but the man continued speaking. He pointed out that the boy's lively personality mirrored that of the blonde-haired kid, and he recalled how the boy had ridiculed 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗁𝗃's explanation while it was still unfolding. This behavior painted a clear picture of who the boy was. Others nearby, who had been minding their own business, found themselves agreeing with the man's words. As Izuku walked past him toward the girl, he offered a final remark about listening to one's own advice. The man was left speechless, unable to formulate a comeback. The woman, still in her position, sensed someone approaching her. She opened her eyes to see a green-haired boy walking toward her. She asked if he needed assistance, appearing unbothered. The boy scratched his head, apologizing for intruding but expressing curiosity about what she was doing. The woman glanced at him with a neutral expression and gently explained that she was praying for guidance in the upcoming exam. An unknown light seemed to shine down upon her, prompting the boy to wonder about its origin. He noticed a slight movement in her posture. She acknowledged her nervousness, admitting that everyone else had impressive quirks while she only had the ability to control vines from her hair. Demonstrating her power, her hair began to move gracefully, forming the shape of a heart. A frown crossed her face as doubt crept in. She felt her ability was not special and feared she wouldn't pass the test. This fear was something she hadn't shared with her parents, as she struggled with feelings of inadequacy regarding her potential as a hero. Suddenly, she felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to see the boy smiling brightly. He reassured her that every power, big or small, was special in its own way and urged her not to compare herself to others. He emphasized that they became heroes to help the innocent, forge their own paths, and grow stronger. His words inspired her, and she felt a blush rise to her cheeks as she took a closer look at him. She thanked him, unsure of how to address him. He introduced himself as 𝗧𝗵𝗲 Senju, and she responded with her name, 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃, smiling back at him. Just then, the voice of President Mike boomed over the intercom, announcing that the test would begin and instructing the examinees to head to the starting line. Both Izuku and 𝗵𝗃𝗁 made their way to the designated spot, where others were already gathered. As the metal gate began to creak open, everyone prepared to prove themselves. President Mike started counting down, but 𝗧𝗵𝗲 rushed forward before the countdown was complete, leaving everyone confused. President Mike shouted that in the real world, there was no countdown during a villain attack, urging everyone to move. Realizing the urgency, the students scrambled into the simulated city. Up ahead, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had already taken down 8 of the 3-point robots. Using chakra to enhance his speed, he leaped into the air and landed on a building, scanning for more robots to defeat. He noticed some students who were distracted and unaware of the approaching robots. Acting quickly, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 jumped from the roof, landing near the ground and moving at incredible speed to rescue the students while dismantling the robots behind them. Afterward, he leaped toward another building, running up the wall until he reached the top to search for more targets. He heard an explosion and turned to see 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗁 shouting as he blasted a robot into pieces. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 followed closely, exploding another robot without hesitation, sending metal fragments flying. Shoto was freezing robots in place with his ice, while Shoka incinerated them with flames. Izumi was using her telekinesis to lift and crush robots effortlessly, releasing them carelessly onto the ground without regard for those nearby. Itama frowned at the sight of his classmates' reckless behavior. Suddenly, he felt the ground tremble slightly and turned to see 3 more point robots approaching. Seizing the opportunity, he dashed toward them with speed. In front of the towering machines, he began performing a series of hand signs rapidly before pausing to focus. He silently invoked his technique, would release, wooden dragon. The ground shook as a wooden dragon emerged, its piercing yellow eyes fixed on the machines, letting out a low growl. At his command, the dragon charged forward, swiftly defeating the first robot by ramming into its chest, then tearing through the second's head, and finally ensnaring the third like a serpent, applying pressure until the robot could no longer withstand it. In the monitor room, a group of renowned pro heroes observed the exam unfold. The current #1 hero, Toshinori Yagi, was present, dressed in a tight blue bodysuit with red stripes resembling a Y on his chest. Beside him stood his wife, Izuku Yagi, in a green bodysuit with a long dark green cape. Next to them sat Shoto Aizawa, known as Eraserhead, who appeared tired with bags under his eyes, dressed in black breathes and a matching long-sleeve shirt, with a gray scarf around his neck. Another hero, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, wore a black mask with golden jaw and ear guards, draped in a tan cloak resembling a double-breasted trench coat. Finally, the most attractive and popular female hero was present, clad in a black leotard over a flesh-colored bodysuit, with thigh-high stockings and heeled boots, completing her look with a small red mask and 𝗓𝗃𝐷𝐶FFS on each wrist. She was the hero known as Midnight, and the last member of the group was the principal of 𝗬𝗲𝗄, a figure whose appearance was a mystery. Some thought he resembled a rat, a mouse, or perhaps a bear. No one could say for certain. He wore a white long-sleeved shirt with a red tie beneath a black vest, completing the look with black breathes and brown boots. Midnight observed the participants skillfully taking down robots and commented on the impressive talent this year. Ectoplasm agreed, noting that several of the candidates possessed powerful quirks, pointing to a screen displaying Itama summoning a dragon from beneath the earth, effortlessly dismantling the robots. All Might remarked on the potential of such power, considering Itama as a great candidate for Izumi's partner. Inko, still amazed by the display, asked Aizawa about Itama's quirk. Aizawa flipped through forms related to the boy and revealed, would release. Some raised their eyebrows at the name, but Nizu was particularly intrigued and excitedly suggested they see how the participants would react to the next challenge. He pressed a button, and the arena was soon filled with chaos. Itama had already destroyed numerous robots while assisting those who were less aware of their surroundings. He assessed the situation, noting that he had accumulated 80 points, which should be sufficient for a secure spot at 𝗬𝗲𝗄. As he sought a place to rest, the ground trembled, and buildings began to shake. Everyone paused to witness the emergence of a new villain, a towering figure that appeared far more formidable than anything they had encountered before. It moved swiftly, launching a punch toward a nearby building, sending debris flying as people scrambled to escape the new threat. Itama spotted a girl with brown hair on the ground, unable to move, her expression one of pain as she looked at her injured leg. With quick thinking, Itama rushed to her side, lifting her in a bridal carry as they both fled from the zero-pointer. Others watched in awe as he paused to help her, knowing their quirks would be ineffective against such a powerful foe. He calmly asked if she was all right, and she expressed her gratitude, managing to nod when he inquired if she could walk. He gently set her down, urging her to escape while he confronted the threat. She glanced between him and the looming robot, hesitating until she saw the calm determination in his eyes. Wishing him good luck, she hurried away. Itama faced the zero-pointer with unwavering composure as it reached for him. He declared it was time to end the confrontation, channeling his chakra throughout his body and bringing his hands together. Taking a deep breath, he focused intently on the robot. Wood-style, deep forest bloom he initiated, and wood-like tendrils erupted from the ground, ensnaring the zero-pointer and immobilizing it. The robot sparked and trembled as the tendrils constricted, tearing it apart. In the monitoring room, everyone was captivated by 𝗧𝗵𝗲's display of power. All Might smiled, contemplating how to ensure the symbol of hope would remain alive, envisioning a future where 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and Izumi might be paired. Nizu commented on the prodigious talent they had discovered. Students watched in awe, some idolizing 𝗧𝗵𝗲's strength while others felt envious. As he walked past them, one student glared at him, teeth clenched in frustration. Bakugo, unable to contain his irritation, approached 𝗧𝗵𝗲, ready to confront him. Just as he was about to place a hand on 𝗧𝗵𝗲's shoulder, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 turned and met Bakugo's gaze with a fierce glare that halted him in his tracks. The hot-headed student felt a wave of fear wash over him as he faced 𝗧𝗵𝗲's intense anger, which seemed to suffocate him. Eventually, Bakugo relented and walked away from the scene, even after the announcement that the exam had concluded. It was now time for 𝗧𝗵𝗲 to await the results. In the early hours of Friday morning, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 sipped coffee while reading the newspaper, waiting for his test results. The doorbell rang, drawing his attention. After placing his mug and newspaper on the table, he opened the door to find an envelope bearing the U logo. He brought it to the table and opened it, revealing a small cylinder. Laying it down, he pressed the only button it had. A bright light shot from the disc, projecting an image of a room onto the nearest wall. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 raised an eyebrow in curiosity as the image began to shake. A rodent in a suit appeared, introducing himself as Nizu, the principal of 𝗧𝗜𝗍. He congratulated 𝗧𝗵𝗲 on his stellar performance, noting that he had scored 66 villain points. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 nodded in satisfaction. Nizu continued, explaining that there was another aspect of the entrance exam, the rescue portion, which was crucial for any hero. The image on the wall shifted to show 𝗧𝗵𝗲 helping fellow participants and rescuing them from danger. In addition to his villain points, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had earned 34 rescue points, bringing his total to 100. Nizu announced that, considering all of this, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had been placed in Class 1A. The transmission ended, and 𝗧𝗵𝗲 smiled, a tear rolling down his cheek as he absorbed the news. He gazed at the ceiling with a sense of pride. His journey to becoming a hero was just beginning. A month had passed in the blink of an eye. During that time, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 dedicated himself to honing his skills with precision. He spent hours in the gym, building his muscles and improving his endurance through morning runs and cleaning the beach. Sipping on a protein shake, he felt satisfied with his physical form. Not too muscular, not too thin, just right. In his solitude, he focused on the jutsu techniques he had been taught, striving to emulate his sensei while also experimenting with new creations. Wiping the sweat from his brow, he admired his progress, though he recognized that his strength was only halfway to his father's level. Despite his considerable power, he was far from Hashirama's extraordinary abilities. Hashirama's strength, agility, and healing skills were legendary. He had earned the title of God of Shinobi for good reason. Having fought in wars since childhood, he had developed vast jutsu and healing rituals without needing hand signs, sparred against the only one who could match him, founded a village, and engaged in fierce battles with his friends. If 𝗧𝗵𝗲 wanted to reach that level, he knew he would have to endure rigorous challenges along the way. Suddenly, his phone vibrated, indicating that the timer he had set for 11 p.m. was going off. Tomorrow marked his first day at 𝗧𝗜𝗍, and 𝗧𝗵𝗲 chuckled to himself, realizing he needed to avoid showing up with bags under his eyes. As he walked through the long corridor of the school, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 searched for his classroom number. After navigating several hallways, he finally found it. The enormous door bore a large 𝗧𝗍𝗍, towering all the way to the ceiling, as if it were meant for giants. Taking a deep breath, he placed his hand on the door, knowing this was where it all began. He opened the door and was immediately met with the loud bickering of his classmates. Bakugo was arguing with the boy in glasses from the other day, who was animatedly gesturing while chastising Bakugo for his disrespectful behavior. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 pinched the bridge of his nose, feeling a wave of annoyance wash over him. As if it weren't enough to be surrounded by these two, Bakugo was hurling insults at the boy, boasting about how he couldn't wait to defeat someone from an elite school. Beside Bakugo, his sister warned him to stop, while the Todoroki twins sighed in exasperation. Izumi sat quietly, minding her own business. Then, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 noticed the boy in glasses approaching him, catching both his and Bakugo's attention. The blonde glared at him, while the boy hurried over. He introduced himself, but 𝗧𝗵𝗲 interrupted, recognizing him as Tenya Ida. Ida stood before him, bowing apologetically. He expressed regret for his behavior during the exam, acknowledging that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had known something the rest of them did not. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 placed a reassuring hand on Ida's shoulder, smiling amicably as he reassured him that the past was behind them. Then, he heard his name called and turned to see the girl he had saved from the 0-pointer waving at him. They shook hands, and she introduced herself as Ochako Uraraka. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 responded with his name and expressed his relief that she had made it. As they chatted, more classmates began to arrive. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 observed his peers for the upcoming year. Among them was a young man with spiky red hair, followed by a boy with bright blonde hair who seemed to sparkle. Another student had half of his hair black, giving off a cool vibe, though 𝗧𝗵𝗲 sensed it was somewhat forced. He decided to reserve judgment until he got to know him better. Next, a shorter girl with dark blue hair, almost purple, caught his attention. Her earlobes had headphone jacks. Following her was a girl with frog-like features, who made eye contact with 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and nodded in greeting. He returned the gesture before shifting his focus to the next student, who was peculiar. A boy whose hair was covered in purple round ball, exuding an unsettling aura that suggested he would be best avoided for now. Just then, a scruffy voice interrupted the chatter. Ida and Uraraka looked down to see a man in a yellow sleeping bag, who seemed to be their instructor. The students were taken aback, while 𝗧𝗵𝗲 regarded the man with interest. The instructor commented on their need to improve their focus, then instructed them to change into their PE uniforms for a quirk evaluation test. He ordered them to meet him outside in 10 minutes. A few minutes later, everyone gathered on the field in their uniforms, waiting for the test to commence. Their instructor began explaining the exam when a girl with pink hair and horns interrupted, inquiring about the mandatory orientation for new students. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was surprised to learn that 𝗧𝗏 allowed teachers full control over their classes, and their instructor decided to skip the orientation to dive straight into the work. He emphasized the importance of understanding their limitations and knowing where they stood in order to improve. The students were informed that they would be tested similarly to their middle school exams, but this time, they would be using their quirks. Excitement bubbled among the students, but the instructor's stern gaze silenced them. He warned them that while they might think it would be fun, they needed to take the evaluation seriously. Then a challenge was presented. Whoever finished in last place would be removed from the hero course and 𝗧𝗏𝗲. Uraraka expressed her disbelief, unable to accept such a harsh consequence. The instructor explained that in the real world, becoming a hero was serious work, requiring dedication to protect the city, the country, and its citizens. Aizawa called out to Senju, who had achieved the highest score in the entrance exam, instructing him to go first. He pointed to a circle drawn on the ground and tossed him a small ball. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 approached the circle, preparing himself as he cracked his neck and shoulders, gripping the ball tightly. With a swift motion, he threw the ball, creating a gust of wind that caused the other students to wobble slightly. The ground beneath him cracked, and the ball soared into the sky, disappearing from view. Aizawa remained unfazed by the display, checking the device that recorded the results. The number displayed was astonishing, 3,500 meters. The students were left in shock, with Bakugo feeling particularly frustrated, believing 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had been holding back during the entrance exam. Izumi narrowed her eyes at the green-haired boy, realizing that her friends had spoken the truth about his abilities. Even her father had mentioned a potential marriage arrangement with someone of such strength, a notion she found laughable. No one was worthy of her lineage, and she vowed to fight against this arrangement. As the other students took their turns, some performed better than others. Bakugo used his explosions to achieve a score of 705. 2 meters. Uraraka utilized her quirk, sending the ball soaring into the sky and earning an infinite score. Yaoyorozu showcased her unique ability to create objects from her body, crafting a cannon that propelled the ball to a score of 600. For meters. The exams continued with the 50-meter dash. Ida raced against Kaminari, finishing in an impressive 1:15 seconds, while Kaminari lagged behind at 3:5 seconds. Next, Izumi faced Aoyama, who attempted to gain speed with his laser beam but was ultimately outpaced by Izumi, who used her telekinesis to glide to the finish line while Aoyama paused mid-race, clutching his stomach in discomfort. In the next challenge, Itama and Mineta faced off. Mineta sprinted ahead, breathing heavily, but a blur raced past him, and the announcement of the winner left him exhausted on the ground. Itama's record was an astonishing 0.5 seconds. The strength test followed, where students tested their grip on a machine. While some struggled, 𝗵𝗲 excelled with a result of 540 kilograms. When it was Itama's turn, he gripped the machine, and the numbers climbed higher and higher until he inadvertently crushed it. He laughed sheepishly as his classmates stared in disbelief. The final event was a standing long jump, where students gained a head start before leaping onto a sand pit. Tsuyu Azui and Toru Hagakure went first, with Toru landing a few feet away and feeling disappointed. Tsuyu, using her frog-like abilities, jumped high and landed ahead of Toru. Katsumi and Shoka followed, with Katsumi using her explosions for an advantage while Shoka created an ice ramp. Both girls landed halfway, resulting in a tie. The last matchup featured Izumi Yagi and Itama Senju. Izumi glanced at Itama, who was preoccupied with stretching. A surge of anger welled up within her as she noticed the color of his hair, reminiscent of someone she despised for ruining her life. As the timer began, both teens dashed toward the line. Izumi used her telekinesis to jump, landing halfway, but her satisfaction quickly faded when she saw Itama far ahead, crossing the finish line first. Anger surged within her at the thought of him stealing her victory. Once all the matchups concluded, the results were displayed on the screen, listing the names and scores. First place, Itama Senju. Second place, Izumi Yagi. Third place, Momo Yaoyorozu. Fourth place, Bakugo Katsuki. Fifth place, Shoto Todoroki. As the names continued to appear, Mineta's trembling figure was the last to be shown, tears streaming down his face. He lamented his potential expulsion, expressing his longing to become a hero. Aizawa informed the class that they would be pushed to their limits over the next 3 years, expecting them to rise to the challenge. Just as he began to leave, he paused and revealed that he had been joking about the expulsion, much to the relief of Mineta and the annoyance of some female students. The next day was much more routine, consisting of regular classes: English, history, literature, and math. Time seemed to drag on as students either completed their work or struggled to stay awake. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway, and the classroom door swung open to reveal All Might in his Silver Age uniform, announcing his entrance with his signature enthusiasm. Meanwhile, his wife could only chuckle, amused by her husband's antics. She remarked that it wasn't normal. Everyone in the room was wide-eyed, except for the twins and Izumi, as they witnessed the two top pro heroes, All Might and Tornado, in their classroom. All Might then announced that it was time for their first heroic lessons. He pressed a button, revealing capsules containing suitcases with their hero costumes. He instructed the students to find their special cases, each marked with their names and designated numbers. Inside were the hero costumes designed based on their 𝗬𝗵𝗲. He encouraged them to get dressed and meet outside in the mock training field. The students eagerly grabbed their uniforms and headed to the locker rooms to change. However, Itama realized he didn't have a costume and was about to leave the classroom when All Might stopped him. All Might noted that Itama lacked a costume and asked if he had forgotten to submit his application. Itama replied that he had brought his own and left the classroom, leaving Inko and Tashinori exchanging curious glances, wondering if he had a homemade suit. In the mock training field, All Might greeted the fresh heroes in training with enthusiasm. He then inquired about Itama's whereabouts. The class looked around in confusion, recalling that he had been with the boys when they headed to the locker rooms. Suddenly, the sound of metal clinking drew their attention to the entrance, where Itama appeared. He wore a dark red, layered, samurai-like armor over a black suit, complete with shoulder guards bearing the Senju symbol. His feet were adorned with black sandals, and white bandages wrapped around his legs, while a forehead protector rested on his head. Kirishima complimented 𝗬𝗲𝗄's costume, expressing admiration. The class stared in awe at his samurai-like appearance. All Might also praised 𝗬𝗲𝗄's costume, to which 𝗬𝗲𝗄 responded dryly. All Might then pulled out a script and explained their objective: to defuse a bomb inside the building. The hero's task was to prevent the bomb from exploding, while the villains aimed to stop the heroes from doing so. He randomly paired the students and assigned 2 groups to enter the building. 𝗬𝗲𝗄 was paired with Yaoyorozu as the hero team against Izumi and Bakugo as the villains. Yaoyorozu expressed her pleasure at working with 𝗬𝗲𝗄, and he reciprocated the sentiment. She then asked about their plan. Silence fell as 𝗬𝗲𝗄 seemed lost in thought, staring at the building without expression. He finally stated that he would go after Bakugo, reasoning that Bakugo's arrogance would lead him to act independently, making him vulnerable. Yaoyorozu listened intently as 𝗬𝗲𝗄 explained that she would face Izumi, who was also known for her cockiness. He advised her to use Izumi's telekinesis against her. With a nod, Yaoyorozu agreed to the plan, and the 2 headed inside the building as All Might signaled them to start. 𝗬𝗲𝗄's predictions soon came true. Within minutes, the sounds of small explosions echoed through the structure. The sandy blonde-haired students soon found Bakugo, who stood tall and glaring at him. 𝗬𝗲𝗄 instructed Yaoyorozu to search for the bomb, and she nodded before running off. Bakugo taunted 𝗬𝗲𝗄, declaring it was just the 2 of them now. 𝗬𝗲𝗄 remained calm, which only irritated Bakugo further. Bakugo launched himself forward with explosions, but 𝗬𝗲𝗄 effortlessly dodged the attack. He countered with a swift kick, sending Bakugo flipping into the air. When Bakugo landed, he wiped his mouth and frowned at the sight of red. Unfazed, Bakugo charged again, spinning himself into an explosive bullet aimed at 𝗬𝗲𝗄. 𝗬𝗲𝗄, however, remained composed, which only fueled Bakugo's frustration. As Bakugo approached, 𝗬𝗲𝗄 raised his hand, stopping the attack with ease. Bakugo's eyes widened in disbelief as he realized he was unable to move. In the spectators' room, Mineta exclaimed in shock at the display of power. Ida adjusted his glasses, astonished by 𝗬𝗲𝗄's strength. Katsumi anxiously bit her nails, worried about her brother, while Shoto narrowed his eyes, recognizing Bakugo's formidable abilities. All Might observed the scene intently, particularly focused on 𝗬𝗲𝗄. Inside the building, Bakugo was not finished. He propelled himself higher, creating an explosion to change his trajectory mid-air. As he soared above 𝗬𝗲𝗄, he exploded again to halt his momentum and aimed at 𝗬𝗲𝗄's back. However, 𝗬𝗲𝗄 swiftly grabbed Bakugo's gauntlet, lifting him upward until the explosion hit the ceiling. Meanwhile, Yaoyorozu felt the floor shake as she searched for the bomb. She wondered what was happening and hoped 𝗬𝗲𝗄 was all right. Izumi, hearing the explosions, clicked her tongue in annoyance, questioning what 𝗬𝗲𝗄 was doing. Unbeknownst to her, Yaoyorozu was hiding nearby. 𝗬𝗲𝗄 delivered a powerful kick to Bakugo's stomach, causing him to cough, then seized his arm, twisting it to dislocate his shoulder. Bakugo yelped in pain, and 𝗬𝗲𝗄 flung him against the wall, leaving cracks behind. He then punched Bakugo in the gut before grabbing him by the throat and throwing him into the hallway, where Bakugo coughed in agony. As 𝗬𝗲𝗄 began to walk away, he heard sparks behind him. Bakugo, still kneeling, managed to shoot an explosion at 𝗬𝗲𝗄, but 𝗬𝗲𝗄 effortlessly redirected the blast, splitting it apart. He looked at Bakugo with an unimpressed expression, asking if he was finished. Bakugo clenched his teeth in frustration, his eyes blazing as he glared at 𝗬𝗲𝗄. He refused to back down, even as pain shot through his shoulder. Determined to have the last laugh, he gripped his gauntlet, holding onto a pin. All Might's authoritative voice echoed through the microphone, urging him to stop, warning that his attack could bring the whole building down. Inko echoed the warning, fearing for the consequences of Bakugo's actions. Bakugo shouted that 𝗬𝗲𝗄 would be fine as long as he dodged, and he released the pin, unleashing a massive explosion. The blast was powerful enough to shatter the walls of the hallway, sending shockwaves throughout the building. Izumi, growing impatient for action, yawned as she watched the chaos unfold. Suddenly, she sensed danger and narrowly dodged a cannonball hurtling toward her. Before she could regain her composure, she felt metal wires grab her and pull her to the ground, leaving her grunting in surprise. Momo emerged from the shadows, revealing that the wires were made from a special alloy she had created. Izumi scoffed at the attempt to restrain her, but Momo explained that it would be enough to stall her. As Momo rushed toward the bomb, Izumi used her telekinesis to rip a pillar from its place, launching it at Momo, who barely managed to dodge. The pillar crashed into the wall, sending rubble flying. Seizing the opportunity, Izumi began to attack Momo with the debris, but Momo was prepared, creating a shield and a metal bat to deflect the incoming projectiles. Yaoyorozu's determination shone through as she realized that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was indeed a long-range fighter. Bakugo watched with satisfaction as his explosion did its work, ignoring the warnings from All Might and Tornado. However, his triumph quickly turned to shock when 𝗧𝗵𝗲 emerged from the smoke, seemingly unscathed, with only minor scratches on his costume. It was as if Bakugo's strongest attack had barely touched him. 𝗧𝗵𝗲's gaze was sharp and emotionless, as if he had faced this before. He swiftly closed the distance between them, unleashing a flurry of punches that Bakugo couldn't evade. Bakugo was sent flying into the air, landing harshly on the cold pavement. 𝗧𝗵𝗲, unimpressed, began forming hand signs. Wood emerged from his arm, wrapping around Bakugo's limbs to immobilize him. Once secured, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 made his way to the upper floor, where the sounds of battle echoed. In the spectators' room, silence enveloped the group as they processed the extraordinary display of power. Kaminari muttered in disbelief, while Uraraka marveled at 𝗧𝗵𝗲's ability to withstand such an attack without a scratch. Tsuyu observed with keen interest, noting his tank-like demeanor. Ojiro admired 𝗧𝗵𝗲's agility and speed, while Kirishima shouted in excitement about the impressive display. Mina teased Kirishima, causing him to blush, while Shiro remarked on 𝗧𝗵𝗲's exceptional skill. Inko watched nervously, not just for Bakugo but for 𝗧𝗵𝗲. His fighting style was skilled and calculated, too calm for comfort, especially after Bakugo's reckless attack. All Might's suspicion grew as he observed 𝗧𝗵𝗲's calm demeanor, even after the explosive confrontation. It seemed impossible that he had emerged unscathed, and All Might felt the need to keep a close watch on him. As 𝗧𝗵𝗲 reached the top floor, he deftly avoided falling debris and approached the room where Izumi and Momo were engaged in battle. Izumi, glaring at Momo, was caught off guard when 𝗧𝗵𝗲 struck her with a powerful punch, sending her crashing back. Before she could recover, wooden beams erupted from the ground, encasing her in a wooden cage. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 declared the match over, urging them not to waste any more time. Furious, Izumi unleashed a burst of energy, causing the cage to explode into splinters. With her eyes glowing, she vanished and reappeared above 𝗧𝗵𝗲, grabbing his shoulders as they crashed through the floors. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 quickly countered, striking Izumi and maneuvering around her, pinning her down. Yaoyorozu, worried for her friend, called out to 𝗧𝗵𝗲, who reassured her to touch the bomb. Hesitating for a moment, Yaoyorozu complied, triggering the alarm that signaled the end of the match. Despite the announcement, Izumi remained undeterred. Izumi was fed up with the match. In a swift motion, she turned and struck 𝗧𝗵𝗲 in the face, grabbing him by the throat and throwing him against the wall, which buckled under the impact. The tension in the air was palpable as voices echoed around her, demanding she stop. Izumi was resolute, declaring that she was determined to teach 𝗧𝗵𝗲 a lesson. Yaoyorozu urged her to leave immediately, insisting that Izumi was losing control. As the chaos escalated, Izumi charged at Izuku, but was caught off guard by wooden tendrils that erupted from the ground. Dismissing them as mere tricks, she soon found herself on the receiving end of a powerful kick to the chin, followed by another to her stomach that sent her crashing down a hallway. Both Izumi and 𝗧𝗵𝗲 faced off, their arms colliding as they locked eyes. In the spectator room, panic erupted among the onlookers. Mina screamed in disbelief, while Ida called for action, realizing the situation was spiraling out of control. Tokoyami expressed his concern, and Shoko warned Izumi that she was going too far. All Might attempted to reach them through the comms, but it seemed futile. Inko managed to contact Yaoyorozu, instructing her to return to safety as the building was on the verge of collapse. Inside, the battle intensified. Izumi engaged 𝗧𝗵𝗲 with a flurry of punches and blocks, her energy surging as she activated her quirk. With a burst of speed, she unleashed a powerful punch, only for 𝗧𝗵𝗲 to evade her strike and counter with a devastating blow that sent her crashing into the wall, causing a shockwave that rattled the structure. Fueled by anger, Izumi charged again, landing a kick that sent 𝗧𝗵𝗲 staggering back. Observing her increasingly erratic behavior, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 retrieved a kunai and prepared to throw it, but Izumi seized him by the collar, lifting him off the ground with a smirk. She taunted him, comparing him to a quirkless loser she knew, relishing the thought of defeating him. Just as she was about to strike, she felt a strange sensation on her shoulder and realized with horror that her long, appealing hair had been cut. Enraged, she turned to find 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had vanished. A sudden punch to her stomach followed by another to her face left her reeling. Desperate to locate him, she spun around, scanning the room for any sign of his presence. Finally, she spotted him. Before she could react, he unleashed a barrage of punches, each one landing with precision, targeting her body and leaving her gasping for breath. With a final kick to her stomach, Izumi fell to the ground, her energy waning. She felt herself slipping into unconsciousness as the ground beneath her crumbled, revealing dirt and debris. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 stood over her, unfazed by the battle, disappointment etched on his face as he left the room just as the medics arrived to assist Izumi. He pondered the nature of her power, realizing it was something beyond mere telekinesis. In the spectator room, excitement mixed with disbelief as Mineta exclaimed that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had won. Kirishima cheered him on, while Jiraiya questioned Izumi's behavior. Ida, adjusting his glasses, remarked on her unheroic attitude, and All Might, watching the unfolding events with concern, acknowledged that Izumi's actions were becoming increasingly wild and reckless. In a meeting room filled with tension, the teachers of 𝗬𝗲𝗄 gathered in silence. Aizawa broke the stillness, expressing his concern over Izumi's behavior. Inko defended her daughter, but Midnight interrupted, emphasizing the danger Izumi had posed to her teammates and the heroes. Aizawa bitterly noted that 𝗧𝗵𝗲's intervention had prevented a disaster, while Nizu observed the situation with a critical eye, contemplating the implications of Izumi's actions. The atmosphere in the room was tense as Present Mike, usually the comedic one, fell silent before speaking in a serious tone. He warned that if the troubling behavior continued, they would have no choice but to expel Izumi from 𝗬𝗲𝗄 and potentially press charges. All Might attempted to interject, but Nizu's voice cut through the air, firm and commanding. He slammed a cup onto the table, causing a small mess, and declared that Izumi was on thin ice. He insisted that either All Might or Inko needed to take responsibility for her actions, or the school would. Both All Might and Inko lowered their gazes, acknowledging the gravity of the situation. Nizu then shifted the topic, announcing that in 2 days, the class would embark on a training trip to the USJ. 13 would guide them through the facility, with All Might accompanying as an additional support. As the meeting was about to conclude, Toshinori raised his hand, calling for attention. The other teachers looked at him with annoyance and irritation, wondering what he would say next. He focused his narrowed gaze on the group and brought up the situation regarding 𝗧𝗵𝗲 Senju, prompting curiosity among the teachers. Toshinori questioned whether it seemed strange that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had managed to defeat Izumi. Present Mike, exasperated, expressed his disbelief at the question. Toshinori urged him to consider the facts. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had taken down the zero-pointer with a single attack, shattered records during orientation, and easily defeated Bakugo and Izumi, who possessed one for all. Vlad crossed his arms, noting that the kid was stronger than he appeared and questioning why that was a problem. Inko, looking weary, shared her observations from the surveillance footage. She explained how 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had executed a well-thought-out strategy against Bakugo, showcasing quick precision and remarkable skill. His abilities and agility were beyond what one would expect from a typical teenager. Toshinori, agreeing with Inko's assessment, pointed out 𝗧𝗵𝗲's quirk, wood style, which allowed him to create trees and wood-like tendrils without any apparent drawbacks. He then displayed a video of the battle, showing 𝗧𝗵𝗲 facing off against Bakugo. The footage revealed that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had remained unscathed even after a massive explosion from Bakugo. Snipe, surprised, raised himself from his seat, astonished by 𝗕𝗫's resilience. Vlad echoed his shock, realizing that 𝗕𝗫 had managed to defeat Bakugo. Despite the attack, the video continued, revealing 𝗕𝗫 catching Izumi off guard during their fight, where he appeared to be holding back throughout the encounter. This revelation piqued the interest of Nizu and Aizawa, as 𝗕𝗫's calm demeanor and lack of fear in a chaotic situation raised concerns. He seemed unfazed, emotionless, and in control. After witnessing 𝗕𝗫's decisive move against Izumi, Nizu turned to Toshinori, seeking clarity on his intentions. Toshinori expressed his belief that 𝗕𝗫 might be a spy sent by 𝗬𝗏, which prompted disbelief from Aizawa, who questioned the evidence behind such an accusation. The other teachers frowned at Toshinori's claim, with Nizu visibly disappointed in him for suggesting that a student could be involved in a plot against All Might and the Hero Society. Inko stood up, her expression resolute, asserting that 𝗕𝗫's change in attitude, his undeniable strength, and his lack of injuries during the battle were all indicators of his potential ulterior motives. Toshinori countered with a critical question. If 𝗕𝗫 were truly a spy, why hadn't he attempted to steal one for all or take action yet? Nizu posed the same question, leaving Inko momentarily speechless. Toshinori argued that 𝗕𝗫 was playing a long game, pretending to be on their side until it was too late for them to realize his true intentions. He expressed frustration, feeling that his concerns were being dismissed. Nizu reminded him that conducting an illegal background check on a student based solely on suspicion was not an option, pointing out that many young students exhibited extraordinary strength. Toshinori challenged Nizu to name one such student, to which Nizu simply replied, "You." The room erupted in quiet laughter, leaving Toshinori embarrassed while Inko face-bombed in frustration. Eventually, the meeting concluded, and the teachers left to prepare for the following day, while Toshinori and Inko lingered behind. Toshinori felt a mix of disbelief and anger at being mocked for his concerns about 𝗕𝗫. He believed it made perfect sense that a student with equal strength to Izumi could pose a future threat. His hands clenched in frustration, he vowed not to let that happen. Turning to Inko, who looked worried, he declared that it was time to have a serious conversation with Izumi. Meanwhile, 𝗕𝗫 was in Recovery Girl's office, receiving treatment for minor injuries. After finishing her work, Recovery Girl playfully scolded him for acting recklessly, reminding him that he and Izumi had caused significant damage. Izuku, feeling guilty, apologized for the chaos they had caused. He then glanced at the other bed, where Izumi lay unconscious but breathing, her body bandaged and her hair in disarray. Recovery Girl expressed her concern for Izumi, acknowledging that her situation was more serious than 𝗕𝗫's. Izumi lay in the hospital bed, her body battered and broken. She had several fractures, including a broken left arm that required a cast for at least a week, multiple broken ribs, and a concussion. 𝗕𝗫 stood by her side, feeling the weight of what had transpired at the mock building. While he had been trying to protect his classmates and himself, he realized that his actions had crossed a line. He felt a deep sense of remorse as he spoke, acknowledging his mistake. Recovery Girl reassured him, explaining that Izumi had made her own choices during the fight and had to face the consequences. 𝗕𝗫 nodded, understanding her words, and took one last look at Izumi before leaving the room. As he walked through the hallways, 𝗕𝗫's mind was consumed by the events of the past few hours. His hands were clenched, and he lowered his head, feeling a mix of sadness and frustration. A memory surfaced, recalling a conversation with Hashirama, who had once posed a challenging question to him about forgiveness. 𝗕𝗫 had expressed his disbelief at the idea of forgiving those who had tormented him since childhood. The pain and suffering he endured seemed insurmountable, and he felt that those who had caused him such anguish should experience the same torment. His voice had been filled with rage as he poured out his feelings to Hashirama. Listening patiently, Hashirama had responded with a calm and understanding demeanor. He explained that while the actions against 𝗕𝗫 were indeed unforgivable, holding on to hatred would only consume him. Hashirama shared his own struggles with anger and vengeance, reminding 𝗕𝗫 that his story was not defined by a painful beginning but by the choices he made moving forward. 𝗕𝗫 felt hollow as he reflected on his inability to grasp the concept of redemption. He wondered if he could ever find the strength to forgive those who had wronged him. Upon entering Class 1A, 𝗬𝗲𝗼 was greeted with excitement from his classmates, who bombarded him with questions and praise. Uraraka expressed her relief at seeing him okay, while others, like 𝗵𝗃 and myheroacademia, complimented his fighting skills. 𝗬𝗲𝗼 was taken aback by their admiration, feeling a mix of embarrassment and happiness. His thoughts were interrupted when Yaoyorozu approached him with concern. She asked if he was all right, and 𝗬𝗲𝗼 reassured her that he was fine, though he was worried about her as well. Yaoyorozu smiled, grateful for his help during the chaos, but then expressed her regret for not being able to assist him more. 𝗬𝗲𝗼 quickly reassured her that she had done her best and that she shouldn't blame herself. As he scanned the room, he noticed 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 was missing and inquired about his whereabouts. His sister responded with irritation, but Shouka intervened, informing him that 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 had just left. Thanking her, 𝗬𝗲𝗼 hurried out of the classroom, ignoring the questions from his classmates. Outside, he spotted 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 walking away with a stoic expression, his eyes obscured by his hair. 𝗬𝗲𝗼 called out to him, prompting 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 to turn with a scowl, questioning 𝗬𝗲𝗼's intentions. 𝗬𝗲𝗼 pressed him, asking why he had gone to such lengths to defeat him and endanger both their partners. 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 remained silent, and 𝗬𝗲𝗼 reiterated his question, seeking clarity on 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁's motives. The two stood in silence, the breeze flowing between them as they locked eyes, each waiting for the other to speak. 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 wore a scowl that gradually transformed into a look of guilt. For the first time, he hesitated to speak. Eventually, he revealed that the green hair of the person before him reminded him of someone from his past. He recalled how he used to believe that this person looked down on him, which had infuriated him. But now, he realized he had been terribly mistaken. 𝗬𝗲𝗼, observing 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁's turmoil, inquired about what had happened. 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 explained that he, along with his sister and the 𝗬𝗏𝗏 siblings, had done something foolish in the past. They had tried to bully this individual, hoping to deter him from pursuing his dreams of becoming a hero. Instead, the person had persisted, undeterred by their actions. A heavy silence enveloped them. 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 shared that his sister and the others wished to seek forgiveness, but he felt it was hopeless. He believed the person was long gone and that even if they found him, he would not welcome their apologies. In fact, 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 thought it likely that the individual would disdain their attempts at reconciliation. 𝗬𝗏𝗼 regarded him calmly, sensing the guilt and shame that weighed on 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁. He expressed his belief that the person might eventually forgive 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁. While the actions taken against him were indeed terrible, 𝗬𝗏𝗼 felt that forgiveness could come with time. He encouraged 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 to focus on self-improvement and becoming a better person. 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 was taken aback by 𝗬𝗏𝗼's unexpected kindness and wisdom. Just hours earlier, he had aimed to humiliate 𝗬𝗏𝗼, yet here he was, receiving guidance instead. 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁, feeling a mix of emotions, spoke in a quieter tone, acknowledging his responsibility for his behavior during the exam, though he quickly reverted to his usual fiery demeanor. 𝗬𝗏𝗼 responded with a cheerful laugh, showing his optimistic nature. 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 reflected on the futility of seeking petty revenge for past grievances, realizing that true justice and closure could not be achieved that way. He recalled his father's words about shaping his own story and felt a glimmer of hope for the future. After their conversation, 𝗵𝘃𝗀𝗁 stormed home, while Izuku returned to school to gather some belongings. Unbeknownst to them, their exchange had been witnessed by their classmates through a large window. Curiosity filled the air as they speculated about the nature of the conversation. Mina questioned what had transpired, looking to Kirishima for insight. Uraraka suggested it was simply a talk between two men, while Jiraiya expressed confusion. Toru wished she knew what they had discussed, and Yaoyorozu noted the laughter that followed the serious talk. Shiro and Kaminari pondered whether it involved an apology, while Uraraka reiterated her earlier statement about it being a conversation between two men, leaving Mina bemused. At the gates of UA, reporters crowded around, eager to interview students about their experiences with All Might and Tornado. 𝗬𝗏𝗼, attempting to evade the reporters, was approached by a female journalist who pressed him for answers. He responded sincerely, acknowledging the honor of being taught by such inspiring heroes before making his way inside. Once in the classroom, Izuku entered and addressed the students, reminding them of the importance of their recent training. He directed a stern look at Bakugo, noting his potential but criticizing his childish attitude. He warned Bakugo that he was fortunate that Senju was in stable condition, otherwise, he would face serious consequences. Bakugo, feeling ashamed, kept his gaze down. Izuku then turned to 𝗧𝗵𝗲, commending his noble actions but advising him to control his strength to avoid further destruction. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 appeared dejected, apologizing for his actions, which surprised his classmates. Izuku reassured them that they had an important task ahead. The students braced themselves, wondering what it could be. Izuku informed them that they needed to choose a representative, prompting a flurry of hands to shoot up in enthusiasm. Kirishima eagerly volunteered, followed by Kaminari and 𝗎𝗪𝙢𝢢𝗎. Aoyama attempted to make a case for himself, but Mina exuberantly declared her longing to be chosen. Iida, taking charge, reminded everyone of the responsibilities that came with being a representative and suggested a voting process to determine the best candidate. Kaminari turned to Tsuyu, questioning the wisdom of the idea, while she pondered how they could trust one another after such a short time. Kirishima pointed out that most would likely vote for themselves. Iida argued that the one with the most votes would be the most suitable choice, seeking Izuku's approval. Izuku, however, had settled into his sleeping bag, seemingly indifferent to the proceedings. Izuku settled into a corner of the room, quickly drifting off to sleep. He expressed his gratitude for the trust placed in him, but the only response he received was the sound of snoring. As the class began to vote for the representative, Yaoyorozu found herself torn between voting for herself or someone else. She glanced at 𝗧𝗵𝗲, who was finishing his vote, and a smile spread across her face as she made her decision. She would vote for someone who embodied leadership and selflessness. The results were soon revealed. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 Senju received 5 votes, while Momo Yaoyorozu garnered 3. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was taken aback by the number of votes he received, never expecting to be chosen as the representative. Katsumi, however, was less than pleased and stood up, glaring at her classmates, demanding to know who had voted for 𝗧𝗵𝗲. 𝗧𝗪𝗏 teased her, questioning whether anyone would genuinely vote for her and her brother. While Katsumi was preoccupied, Ochako whistled to herself, and Iida sat in shock, realizing he had received no votes. He trembled in his chair, adjusting his glasses as he lamented his situation. He expressed his resignation, acknowledging that he could not contest the system he had proposed. Momo inquired if he had voted for someone else, while Sato questioned his decision to not vote for himself. After the votes were tallied, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and Yaoyorozu stood at the front of the class. Izuku announced the results in his usual monotone voice, confirming 𝗧𝗵𝗲 as the representative and Yaoyorozu as his deputy. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 expressed his gratitude and promised to do his best, while Momo, though wishing she were the representative, felt content with her role. Lunchtime arrived, and the cafeteria buzzed with students chatting. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 sat with Uraraka and Iida, enjoying their meal. Uraraka exclaimed how delicious the rice curry was, and Iida agreed, still astonished by the 5 votes 𝗧𝗵𝗲 received. He questioned his qualifications for the role, but Uraraka reassured him that he would be a great candidate, revealing that she had voted for him. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 acknowledged her vote, causing Uraraka to blush slightly out of embarrassment. Yaoyorozu joined them, confirming that she had also voted for 𝗧𝗵𝗲, believing he was the ideal choice after their training test. Iida nodded in agreement, sharing his reasons for voting for 𝗧𝗵𝗲, highlighting his bravery during the heroic exam. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 felt a surge of pride at Iida's words. Uraraka, curious, asked Iida about his family's wealth. Iida sighed, adjusting his glasses as he prepared to explain. He revealed that he came from a long line of heroes and was the youngest son of the Iida family, mentioning his older brother, Ingenium, a respected hero known for his speed. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 recognized the name and expressed admiration, while Iida shared his aspiration to follow in his brother's footsteps. He believed 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was better suited for leadership after witnessing his actions during the practical exam. Suddenly, an alarm blared throughout the school, announcing a level 3 security breach. Panic erupted in the cafeteria as students began to flee in chaos. Iida questioned what was happening, and a fellow student explained that someone had breached the school gates, a situation unprecedented in their time at the school. As hysteria spread, students collided and pushed against one another in their desperate attempt to escape. Amid the turmoil, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and his friends struggled to reach the large windows. Outside, reporters had gathered, and 𝗧𝗏 and 𝗵𝗃 were present, observing the unfolding scene. The press clamored for all might and tornado, adding to the confusion. 𝗵𝗃's irritation was palpable as he tried to manage the situation. The warning was clear as he expressed his annoyance at the situation. The reporters were persistent, seeking a comment. He understood their tactics well. One comment would lead to many more. 𝗧𝗏 stated this firmly. 𝗵𝗃 leaned in closer, suggesting that since the reporters were trespassing, they could simply deal with them. He was eager to use his quirk on the press. 𝗧𝗏 shot him a disapproving look, advising him against it. The last thing they needed was to tarnish their reputations. They would wait for the police to handle the situation. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 sighed internally, frustrated that the press had caused such chaos over a trivial interview. He scanned the room, searching for a way to restore calm. An idea struck him. He called out to 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏, asking her to use her quirk on him. She managed to touch his fingers, allowing him to float slightly off the ground. With a burst of speed, 𝗧𝗏𝗲 propelled himself above the exit sign and stood tall, commanding the attention of the crowd. His powerful voice resonated throughout the room, silencing the confused students. He reassured them that the chaos was merely caused by the press outside and that the teachers had everything under control. They were students of 𝗬𝗧𝗏, future pro heroes, and they needed to act accordingly. The students gradually quieted down, relief washing over them. Soon, the sound of police sirens filled the air, signaling that the reporters would soon disperse. 𝗧𝗏𝗲 descended from his perch and joined his friends, who looked pleased with his actions. He expressed concern for their well-being, relieved to hear that they were all right. 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏 praised him for his impressive display, while 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗀 acknowledged his leadership. Ida expressed his satisfaction with his choice to support 𝗧𝗏𝗲. Outside, the police had arrived and ordered the reporters to leave or face arrest. 𝗧𝗏𝗲 narrowed his eyes at the departing journalists, wondering how they had gained access to the school grounds. Only students and teachers were allowed entry, which raised questions about who had instigated this incident and why. Meanwhile, in another part of town, heroes were engaged in a fierce battle against a giant pink villain wreaking havoc. The villain had captured a family, threatening them as he retreated. The heroes, including 𝗵𝗃 and 𝗵𝗃, were exhausted from the fight. Suddenly, a booming voice announced the arrival of All Might, who descended from the sky and swiftly incapacitated the villain with a powerful strike. He freed the family, reassuring them of their safety. All Might felt the pressure of time as he heard another civilian scream in the distance. He grimaced, knowing he would face consequences for being late. He leaped into action, racing toward the source of the scream. He reflected on his diminishing powers since passing One for All to Izumi and the toll it had taken on him. Arriving at the scene, he stopped a car from advancing by disabling its engine. His thoughts turned to Izumi, who had been in a coma since her defeat in a training exercise. Although part of him wanted to blame 𝗧𝗏𝗲, he recognized that Izumi's attitude had contributed to her situation. He hoped she would eventually overcome her rebellious phase and become the hero she was meant to be. Back at 𝗬𝗧𝗏 announced the day's hero training class, revealing that there would be 4 instructors, including All Might. The students speculated about the 4th teacher while 𝗧𝗏 explained the focus of their training: rescue operations involving natural disasters and emergencies. Excitement filled the room as Kaminari commented on the upcoming challenges. Mina enthusiastically agreed, but 𝗧𝗏's rising aura silenced the class, reminding them that he was not finished speaking. He allowed them the choice to participate and activated a remote that revealed their hero costumes. The students eagerly prepared for the rescue training. Outside, Senju informed everyone that the bus had arrived, prompting 𝗧𝗏 to instruct them to board. Senju relayed the message to his classmates, while Ida insisted on forming an orderly line. 𝗧𝗏𝗲 chuckled at Ida's formality, reminding him that it was just a regular bus. Ida blushed, realizing his mistake. As they prepared to leave, they noticed someone was missing. Uraraka asked about Izumi's whereabouts, and Aizawa's cold gaze met hers, revealing his concern. After her recent actions during the heroic exam, Izumi would be staying at the school for intensive study until the end of the day. It felt harsh to everyone, especially since they had only just begun their journey at the school. Итама was the first to board the bus, reflecting on the idea that actions have consequences. As the class chatted among themselves, Итама found a moment of peace, meditating and feeling a connection with the air around him. Suddenly, 𝗬𝗧𝗄𝗎 called out to him, breaking his concentration. She asked about his quirk, 𝗧𝗏, noting its resemblance to 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗧𝗏. Итama smiled and clarified that while there were similarities, his abilities were on a different level. This piqued the interest of his classmates, who were eager to learn more. He explained that 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗧𝗏 could control wood from his body, while his quirk allowed him to create large wooden constructs from the earth. He kept some details to himself, wanting to build trust with his peers first. Kirishima expressed admiration for Itama's powers, noting the potential for many applications. He then reflected on his own quirk, feeling it lacked the same flair. Итама encouraged him, emphasizing that every quirk has its unique strengths and that Kirishima could become a pro hero one day. Kirishima questioned the importance of popularity in heroism, while Aoyama confidently proclaimed the dual nature of his laser quirk. Mina interjected, teasing Aoyama about his frequent stomach issues after using it, which annoyed him. Kirishima shifted the conversation to the volatile personalities of Bakugo and Katsumi, suggesting they might struggle with popularity due to their tempers. Tsuyu bluntly agreed, prompting an angry outburst from Katsumi, who challenged her. Bakugo remained unusually quiet, which Tsuyu pointed out to support her argument. Kaminari chimed in, humorously noting that they had only known each other for a few days, yet their personalities were already clear. Katsumi retaliated with a fierce retort, unintentionally causing laughter among their classmates, while Momo expressed her disapproval of the language used. Uraraka, however, found the banter amusing. Just then, Aizawa interrupted, announcing their arrival. As the students disembarked, they were greeted by the fourth hero attending the trip. Initially surprised, their astonishment quickly turned to excitement upon recognizing space hero 𝗬𝗏, who wore an astronaut-like costume with a fluffy white jacket and a black helmet. Uraraka exclaimed her admiration for 𝗬𝗏, who urged the students to enter the building without delay, revealing a vast interior filled with collapsed ruins, mountains, waterfalls, and more. Kirishima marveled at the scene, likening it to a national theme park. 𝗬𝗏 explained that the facility was designed to train in natural disasters, calling it the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ for short. Aizawa approached 𝗬𝗏, noting the absence of All Might and Tornado. 𝗬𝗏 whispered that All Might was resting after exhausting himself on the way to school, while Tornado stayed behind to keep an eye on Izumi. Aizawa sighed, acknowledging Tornado's role before deciding to proceed without them. 𝗬𝗏 addressed the students, emphasizing the importance of understanding their quirks. She explained her own quirk, the black hole, which could absorb anything and reduce it to dust. The students listened intently as she warned them about the potential dangers of quirks in a superhuman society. She encouraged them to hone their abilities, to save lives, hoping they would recognize their power to help others. Just as Aizawa began to speak, the lights flickered, and a black portal opened in the USJ. Aizawa quickly instructed 𝗬𝗏 to protect the students as he prepared for the unexpected. Kirishima, curious about the portal, wondered if it was part of their training, but Itama's serious expression halted him. He warned Kirishima not to approach, sensing the gravity of the situation. Those were true villains, Итама observed with a serious expression. Senju was correct, these were indeed real threats. The students were taken aback as villains stepped through the portal. One man appeared, his body covered in hands, while another wore a black cloak adorned with a red cloud insignia and an orange mask that concealed his identity. Итама turned to his classmates, urging them to remain vigilant. They needed to stay alert. These villains would not hesitate to strike. His bright green eyes narrowed at the two men. It seemed that All Might was absent. The only heroes present were 𝗬𝗏 and Eraserhead, which puzzled the voice that spoke, shrouded in black mist and dressed in a suit. The man known as Shigaraki scratched his neck, expressing frustration over All Might's absence. He had gone to great lengths to bring his allies, who were eager to meet the symbol of peace. Shigaraki suggested that perhaps they should harm a few students to lure All Might into their midst. The masked man chuckled softly while surveying the area and the audience. He advised Shigaraki to be patient, assuring him that All Might would arrive. In the meantime, they could test their weapon against the new generation of heroes, a chance for recreation before the main event. Aizawa's scarf and hair lifted as he prepared for battle. The situation was dire. Villains had infiltrated the school, which seemed impossible to Kirishima. Tokoyami speculated that this attack was orchestrated by someone with a specific goal. Momo questioned 13 about the building's intrusion sensors, which had not activated, leaving the students concerned. Shoto theorized that if the alarms hadn't gone off, it meant one of the villains possessed a quirk capable of blocking their senses. They had clearly planned this carefully, and whatever their objective was, it was significant. Aizawa commanded 13 to evacuate the students and alert the school. A realization struck him. If the villains could block their sensors, they might also disrupt their communications. He instructed Kaminari to attempt to contact the school, but their efforts were in vain as they received no signal. Aizawa donned his yellow goggles, focusing intently on the villains. He recognized them as the ones who had breached the barrier and allowed the press in the previous day, using them as a distraction. Shigaraki confirmed their intentions, revealing that their mission was to eliminate the symbol of peace. Mineta trembled in fear, unable to believe the seriousness of the situation. Aizawa descended the stairs, confronting the waiting villains. One attempted to shoot him with a quirk resembling a gun, but no bullets fired. As Aizawa nullified the villains' powers, he swiftly wrapped them in his scarf, lifting them into the air and slamming them into another group, incapacitating them. The lower-ranking villains recognized Aizawa's prowess. They were alarmed to realize they were facing Eraserhead, who could nullify quirks with his gaze. A four-armed villain leaped from the crowd, attacking Aizawa, who deftly dodged and countered with a punch. He skillfully wrapped the villain's legs with his capture gear, evading another strike and delivering a kick in response. Aizawa hurled the captured villains toward a group of their allies, causing chaos among them. Tobi inquired about Aizawa's identity, and Shigaraki explained that he was a hero capable of nullifying quirks with his gaze, making it impossible to determine who he was targeting. Tobi found Aizawa's quirk intriguing, but Shigaraki expressed frustration, noting that it complicated their teamwork and trust in each other's abilities. He lamented the challenges posed by professional heroes. 13 urged the students to leave immediately, but their escape route was blocked by Kurogyri, who introduced himself and his allies as the League of Villains. He acknowledged the impoliteness of their intrusion but insisted on making their presence known. 13 positioned herself protectively in front of the students, challenging Kurogyri's arrogance in believing they could easily defeat the symbol of peace. Kurogyri laughed, admitting that he had expected All Might to be present but noted that plans could change unexpectedly. As 13 prepared to use her quirk, Kirishima and Katsumi leaped to attack Kurogyri, refusing to stand idle. The smoke from Katsumi's quirk obscured the scene, but as it cleared, they found Kurogyri unharmed and still standing. He remarked on the danger of their actions and cautioned them to be more careful, lest someone get hurt. 13 shouted for the students to move aside as darkness enveloped the floor, and portals began to appear around them. Kurogyri declared his intention to scatter them throughout the facility. Kurogyri shouted about the fate of his comrades as the portal mist began to envelop the students, a strong wind tugging at them. Kirishima, confused, exclaimed about the bizarre situation while he and Katsumi shielded their faces from the dark mist. Ida was the first to react, springing into action as he pulled Uraraka and Sato away from the fog. Shoji used his body as a shield to protect Mina and Siro. Itama created a wooden dome to safeguard the remaining students, but those who were not fortunate enough were drawn into the mist. The wooden dome sank into the earth, revealing that some students had been separated. Meanwhile, Aizawa was engaged in a fierce battle against the villains, feeling slightly overwhelmed by the sheer number of adversaries closing in on him. He swung himself using his scarf, grabbing a villain and tossing him into a group, knocking them down like bowling pins. As he landed, he surveyed his surroundings, realizing the situation was becoming troublesome. He dodged another attack and noted the imposing figure of a giant man, whose bird-like features and exposed brain made him a daunting presence. Aizawa observed that the giant had not moved since his arrival and felt the pressure of the villains surrounding him. Aizawa contemplated his options, knowing it was reckless and unwise to call for help, but the dire circumstances left him with no choice. He called out to Senju, requesting assistance despite the ethical implications of asking a student for help. Itomo looked from Aizawa to his classmates, noting who remained: Ida, Shoji, Mina, Shiro, Bakugo, Uraraka, and Sato. He rallied his classmates, instructing them to stay with 13 while he rushed toward the staircase, leaping off the edge to confront the villains. The villains taunted him, underestimating his resolve. A female villain with spikes on her arms charged at Itomo, but before she could finish her taunt, he swiftly incapacitated her with a precise strike. Itomo then faced another villain, delivering a powerful jab that left the foe incapacitated on the ground. Toby observed Itomo's skill, recognizing that he must be well-trained if Aizawa had called upon him. Meanwhile, Aizawa continued to evade Shigaraki, who relentlessly pursued him. Shigaraki counted down the seconds, taunting Aizawa as he attempted to intercept him. Aizawa fought back, but Shigaraki's touch began to decay his skin, causing him to wince in pain. Aizawa gritted his teeth, realizing he needed to act quickly. He punched Shigaraki again before retreating, aware that his quirk was not suited for prolonged battles against many foes. Just then, Itomo appeared, delivering an uppercut to a villain and using him to strike down others. Aizawa acknowledged Itomo's timely assistance, impressed by his performance. Shigaraki, intrigued by the turn of events, observed the two fighters. In the USJ entry, Shoji used his quirk to scan for their classmates. Ida, anxious, pressed him for information. Shoji confirmed that everyone was scattered but accounted for, bringing a sigh of relief to the group. However, they still faced the looming threat of the Black Mist. Shiro expressed concern about their options against the villain, who seemed immune to physical attacks. Bakugo, eager for action, shouted about blowing the villain up, but Sato restrained him, reminding him of the villain's resilience. 13 turned to the group, seeking the fastest among them. Ida raised his hand, ready to take on the task. 13 asked him to run to the school and alert everyone about the situation, explaining that the alarms were silent and their communication devices were malfunctioning due to a villain's quirk. Ida hesitated, feeling torn about leaving his friends behind. Sato encouraged him, assuring Ida that they would hold their ground until help arrived. Shiro joined Sato, ready to support their friend in the fight ahead. "Clear that annoying fog with your speed," Bakugo shouted, his hands crackling with energy. He urged Ida to move quickly, emphasizing the urgency of the situation. Uraraka offered her assistance, promising to help him float as she waved to him. Ida, initially stunned, shifted from a smile to a serious expression as he prepared to run. Kurojirai, mocking him, pointed out the foolishness of revealing their plans. Just then, 13 reacted swiftly, a smile hidden beneath her suit as she activated her quirk, aiming to draw in the villain. Kurojirai acknowledged 13's power, calling it impressive but reminding her that she was merely a rescue hero with limited combat experience. As 13's quirk began to take effect, she felt its pull on her own body, causing her costume to tear. Kurojirai's eyes glinted with amusement as he taunted her, watching her struggle. 13 fell forward, unable to move. Uraraka, filled with concern for her favorite hero, called out to 13. Sato urged Ida to act quickly, while Bakugo shouted for him to move. Ida, frozen in disbelief, recalled 13's words and, with determination, activated his engines, propelling himself past the villain. Kurojirai pursued him, vowing not to let him escape, aware that reinforcements would complicate their plans. As Ida ran, doubts clouded his mind, but he remembered his classmates and teachers relying on him. Just when he thought it was over, Bakugo leaped in, creating an explosion that distracted 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 while Shoji grabbed the villain. Shoji urged Ida to run, and Ida picked up speed. 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏, furious, chased after Ida again. Uraraka, noticing a metal component on 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏, realized it was part of his main body. She acted quickly, using her quirk to latch onto it and lift the villain into the air. 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏, enraged, shouted at her. Meanwhile, Ida struggled to open the door, using all his strength as it began to budge. 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 commanded Ida to come back, but Sero intervened, throwing duct tape at 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 to restrain him. Sato helped pull the tape, allowing Ida to escape the USJ. Ida accelerated, racing towards you for reinforcements. Meanwhile, Aizawa and 𝗬𝗓𝗏 faced off against the final boss. Aizawa focused on the villain with the hands, while 𝗬𝗓𝗏 observed the masked man, noting his stillness. The masked individual declared his intent to use them for target practice until the symbol of peace arrived, revealing his confidence. Before he could issue further orders, 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏 emerged from a portal, reporting to Shigaraki that 13 was no longer a threat but that some students had escaped. Shigaraki, frustrated, expressed his anger at 𝗧𝗪𝗧𝗏's failure, lamenting the impossibility of defeating the pro-heroes who might arrive. Nearby, Mineta and Tsu overheard their conversation, realizing they might be saved. Mineta celebrated, but his excitement was cut short when he made an inappropriate move, prompting Tsu to retaliate. Toby, observing the situation, saw an opportunity to strike a blow to the hero's morale, moving with incredible speed toward Mineta and Tsu. Aizawa, sensing danger, rushed to protect them but was intercepted by the Nomu. Toby brandished a kunai, preparing to strike Tsu when 𝗬𝗓𝗏 intervened, gripping Toby's wrist with a fierce expression. His eyes burned with determination as he stood ready to confront the masked threat. 𝗬𝗓𝗏 firmly grasped Toby's cloak and aimed a punch at his face, leaving Aizawa, Tsu, and Mineta in stunned silence. However, 𝗬𝗓𝗏's fist passed right through Toby. Toby responded with a swift kick to 𝗬𝗓𝗏's jaw, sending him flying several meters away. Mineta, in disbelief, exclaimed about 𝗬𝗓𝗏's fist going through Toby, shaking Tsu, who stood there in shock. Aizawa observed the scene, baffled. He realized that Toby possessed a rare permeation quirk, recalling that the only other person he knew with such a quirk was a third-year student. This revelation could change the fight's outcome. Toby declared that their game was over, addressing the Nomu, which perked up at the mention of its name. He instructed the Nomu to handle the hero and the boy. The Nomu nodded in acknowledgement. Aizawa charged at the Nomu, activating his quirk, but the creature was too quick. It struck Aizawa with a powerful fist, sending him sprawling several feet away. He staggered to the ground, rolling to stop himself. BLD escaped his lips as he struggled against the pain, his vision blurring from a gash on his forehead. He attempted to rise, but the Nomu's massive hand crushed his left arm. Aizawa cried out in pain as numbness spread through his shattered arm. The Nomu seized his head, slamming it against the hard cement floor. Aizawa realized that even without powers, the Nomu was physically formidable. As his vision dimmed and he began to lose consciousness, the Nomu prepared to strike again. Just then, a powerful kick sent the Nomu flying away from Aizawa, crashing into fake props before coming to a stop against a tree. Shigaraki shouted in surprise, turning to see the boy who had delivered the blow. 𝗬𝗓𝗏 knelt beside Aizawa, his expression a mix of concern and calmness. He apologized for not arriving sooner, explaining that Toby's kick had caused more damage than he anticipated. Wiping BLD from his chin, he noticed Aizawa struggling to breathe. 𝗬𝗓𝗏 formed a hand sign, and a green glow enveloped his hand as he pressed it against Aizawa's chest. Gradually, Aizawa's wounds began to heal. The gash on his forehead showed signs of recovery, and the pain throughout his body started to fade. His broken arm felt slightly better. Aizawa attempted to speak, but 𝗬𝗓𝗏 urged him to remain silent, assuring him that healing was underway. Suddenly they heard movement. The Nomu had risen, smoke swirling around its head, revealing the extent of the damage from 𝗬𝗓𝗏's kick. It began to heal, growling in anger. 𝗬𝗓𝗏 reassured Aizawa to rest, promising to handle the creature. Aizawa, however, insisted they retreat, warning that the 𝗓𝗵𝗲 was designed to defeat All Might and that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 would only put himself in danger. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 shook his head, determined to confront the 𝗓𝗵𝗲. He argued that the creature would continue to pursue them and could threaten other students. He was resolute that they had to take it down. With a fighting stance, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 faced the 𝗓𝗵𝗲, whose eyes locked onto his light green, emerald gaze, growling menacingly. To be continued. Izumi lay in a hospital bed, surrounded by the sterile smell of medicine, a situation she detested. Being confined to a hospital was frustrating, especially since she had been barred from participating in the USJ event and was instead stuck doing homework. She lamented that if only 𝗧𝗵𝗲 hadn't interfered and lost like a proper villain, she wouldn't be in this predicament. The door to the nurse's room opened, and Izumi looked up to see Tashinori and Inko enter. Her sour expression shifted to one of happiness upon seeing her parents, but their faces reflected disappointment and anger. They sat beside her bed as Izumi began to rant about her situation and punishment. She expressed her frustration over being stuck in the nurse's office, barred from the USJ, and having lost to 𝗧𝗵𝗲. She pointed out her short haircut, a result of the battle, and complained about how unfair it all was. Tashinori responded coldly, reminding her of the trouble she was in. Inko crossed her arms, expressing disappointment in Izumi's behavior. She emphasized that they had raised her to be a responsible and striving young heroine, not to act recklessly and endanger others. Izumi snorted in response, dismissing her mother's words. Inko insisted that Izumi's attitude needed to change immediately. Izumi retorted, questioning why her parents hadn't intervened when other issues arose in the family. Tashinori's anger boiled over at her insult, and in a moment of rage, he slapped her cheek, shocking both Inko and Izumi. He admonished her, asserting that despite their failures with Izuku, she had no right to insult him. He reminded her that he had entrusted her with one for all, not for her to act spoiled, warning her that if she continued down this path, she could face serious consequences. Izumi was left in shock, realizing the gravity of her situation. The mere thought of returning to prison filled Izumi with dread. She had already experienced that place, and it was anything but enjoyable. Inko, despite her frustration with her daughter, found the idea of Izumi going back to prison unbearable. Tashinori turned to his wife, asserting that their daughter needed discipline and that her current attitude could not continue. Izumi protested vehemently, expressing her strong longing to avoid prison. Tashinori's voice rose in response, but his words were abruptly interrupted when the door swung open. Power Loader, a teacher from U, burst in with urgent news. USJ was under attack by villains, and they needed to act quickly. Inko was taken aback, questioning how such an event could occur, given the alarm system designed to alert the school of threats. Power Loader explained that a villain was likely jamming communications in the area. Tashinori's expression shifted from concern to seriousness, his trademark smile replaced by a frown. He told Izumi that their conversation would have to wait. Transforming into his all-might form, Tashinori rushed out with Tornado, leaving Izumi alone in the room. Her head hung low, green hair obscuring her eyes. Her only functioning arm trembled, not from fear but from anger. Clenching her fist tightly, she felt her nails dig into her skin. In a fit of rage, she yelled and struck her homework, sending books crashing to the floor and papers scattering everywhere. Izumi glared at the mess, her eyes burning with fury as she vented her frustration. She couldn't understand why everything was spiraling out of control. Once a promising student, she now faced arrest, abandonment by her friends, and punishment for injuries sustained in battle. It felt like her life was unraveling. She had always envisioned herself as the next symbol of peace, destined to be the greatest hero. Grinding her teeth, Izumi's face darkened with determination. Wherever Deku was, he better hope to remain hidden. She blamed him for ruining her life. She also intended to confront the Senju kid for the humiliation she had endured. Perhaps then, things could return to how they once were. Meanwhile, at USC, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 faced off against the 𝗓𝗵𝗲, which growled menacingly. The creature's massive fists readied for battle as it charged at him. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 dodged the initial attack and countered with a powerful roundhouse kick, but the 𝗓𝗵𝗲 remained unfazed. As the creature attempted to grab him, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 leaped and executed a downward kick, causing the 𝗵𝗲 to crash to the ground, creating cracks in the cement. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 watched as the 𝗵𝗲 began to rise again, its brain regenerating. Shigaraki, observing the fight, commented on 𝗧𝗵𝗲's impressive kick but warned that the 𝗵𝗲 was designed to defeat All Might, equipped with shock absorption that rendered 𝗧𝗵𝗲's strikes ineffective. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 remained focused, determined to find a way to overcome the formidable foe. The 𝗵𝗲 unleashed a shockwave by slamming its fists into the ground, sending a powerful air attack toward 𝗧𝗵𝗲. He braced himself, blocking the assault but still being pushed back slightly. The 𝗵𝗲 continued its relentless barrage, throwing punches that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 skillfully dodged and blocked. As the battle raged on, the ground trembled beneath them, causing students and villains alike to look around in confusion. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 delivered an uppercut, but the 𝗵𝗲 quickly retaliated, sending him crashing into a wall, enveloped in smoke. Uraraka cried out in alarm, while Mineta panicked, fearing their impending doom. Bakugo, however, remained calm, stating that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had survived worse challenges before. His classmates looked on, uncertain but hopeful. Shigaraki taunted 𝗧𝗵𝗲, claiming that the symbol of peace would fail to save him. But Toby sensed something was off. As the smoke cleared, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 emerged from the wall, his expression calm. He realized that while the 𝗵𝗲 had shock absorption, it likely had a weakness he could exploit. With newfound determination, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 climbed to the top of a nearby structure, preparing for the next phase of the battle. He began removing weights from his arms and legs, readying himself for the fight ahead. Before his father passed away, he had advised him to wear weights to enhance his strength and agility, instructing him to remove them when the moment was right. As 𝗧𝗵𝗲 took off the weights, Mina expressed her disbelief, questioning if those were indeed weights. Sato wondered if 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had brought them along, prompting Bakugo to chuckle. He recalled the test when he felt something hard during 𝗧𝗵𝗲's punches, realizing it was the weights, not just the force of the attacks. Uraraka looked at Bakugo in shock, unable to comprehend the situation. Bakugo turned back to 𝗧𝗵𝗲, asking if he had been wearing those weights throughout class. Shiro, skeptical, doubted the weights would be beneficial, especially against their formidable opponent. Shigaraki laughed derisively, mocking the idea that removing a few weights could make a difference. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 took a deep breath, feeling a newfound lightness in his body, allowing him to move more freely. He dropped the weights, which crashed to the ground, creating a cloud of dust and leaving everyone around in a state of shock and confusion. Shigaraki screamed in disbelief, while Mina shouted about the weight's heaviness. Bakugo grimaced at the thought of what could have happened had 𝗧𝗵𝗲 removed the weights during their fight. Shiro expressed his astonishment at the weight's capacity. Aizawa, lying on the floor, sighed at the chaos, remarking that sometimes 𝗧𝗵𝗲 could be overwhelming. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 cracked his joints and began stretching before focusing on the 𝗵𝗲, which stared back at him blankly. In an instant he vanished. The 𝗵𝗲 staggered as 𝗧𝗵𝗲 delivered a swift kick to its back, sending it slightly off the ground before following up with a punch to its face, causing it to roll down the staircase. The 𝗵𝗲 quickly regenerated and growled at 𝗧𝗵𝗲, charging at him with increased speed. It attempted a punch, but 𝗧𝗵𝗲 dodged effortlessly. The surrounding area trembled as the 𝗵𝗲's punch missed, and it began to match 𝗧𝗵𝗲's speed. To the naked eye, their movements were nearly imperceptible, only flashes and afterimages visible as they battled. It seemed the 𝗵𝗲 was adapting to 𝗧𝗵𝗲's pace. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 sensed something within the 𝗵𝗲 that felt oddly familiar, and as the realization struck him, his eyes widened. The presence of chakra was unmistakable. With each attack, the wind grew more turbulent. The 𝗵𝗲 roared and launched a fist at 𝗧𝗵𝗲, who swiftly used his kunai to sever the 𝗵𝗲's hand. Without hesitation, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 infused chakra into his leg and executed a roundhouse kick, causing the 𝗵𝗲 to stumble. He then blitzed behind it, delivering a kick that lifted it into the air before punching it in the chest, sending it crashing into a wall. The 𝗵𝗲 growled as chakra surged from within, enveloping it in a dark aura. The atmosphere shifted, and the 𝗵𝗲 opened its mouth, drawing in air until its stomach and chest expanded. Suddenly, it unleashed a massive wind attack toward 𝗧𝗵𝗲. He skillfully pirouetted, redirecting the attack upward. The entire dorm felt the impact of the blast. Students at the entrance struggled to maintain their balance, grabbing onto anything to avoid being swept away. Mina and 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏 clung to 13 for support, while Bakugo used his explosions to propel himself toward the stairs. 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏 yelled at Bakugo, questioning his actions, only to see him grab Aizawa, both men tumbling to the floor before being saved by Shoji, who multiplied his arm. Shiro checked on Aizawa, who urged them to stay calm and avoid the wind. Meanwhile, Wajiro and Koda were in the fake building area after taking down villains when they heard an explosion. A powerful wind swept through, sending them tumbling. Wajiro clung to a building while Koda held onto his tail, trying to shield themselves from the flying glass. Wajiro warned Koda to avoid the shards. Momo and Jairu were assisting a dazed Kaminari, who had knocked out villains but was left momentarily incapacitated. Jairu grumbled about Kaminari's state, while Momo suggested they return to the others. Suddenly, a fierce wind knocked them off their feet. Yaoyorozu created a metal rod, anchoring it to the ground as Jairu held onto her leg, cradling Kaminari with her other arm. Jairu shouted in confusion about the source of the wind, and Momo urged them to hold on tight. In another part of the facility, Tokoyami was battling villains with Dark Shadow when he was thrown off balance by the explosion. Dark Shadow managed to stabilize him, but he was still disoriented. Shoto and Todoroki had frozen the mountain section, immobilizing the villains, while Katsumi used her explosions to incapacitate another foe. Just as they were about to regroup, another explosion rocked the area, followed by a powerful gust of wind. Both Todoroki and Shoka used their ice to create a thick, solid wall to shield themselves and Katsumi from the fierce wind. Katsumi expressed her confusion and concern about the situation. As the attack subsided, Itama's costume showed signs of damage from the assault. Determined to end the confrontation, Itama charged toward the Nomu with impressive speed, delivering powerful punches that pushed the creature back against the wall. However, the Nomu retaliated, grabbing Itama and slamming him against a wall before dragging him across the area and throwing him to the ground. Itama quickly regained his footing, narrowly avoiding a fist enveloped in red chakra that came crashing down, creating a significant dent in the cement floor and causing cracks to spread across the concrete. The beast growled in frustration, its hand shifting as it mixed chakra with wind to form a solid blade. It raised its hand to strike, but Itama evaded the attack, which instead struck the mountain, splitting it in two. The sight shocked the teachers, students, and low-ranking villains, who witnessed the mountain being sliced effortlessly. Mineta, overwhelmed with fear, cried out in panic, while Kirishima muttered in disbelief at the display of destruction. Shiro questioned their chances against such a formidable opponent, realizing the creature was designed to defeat All Might. Itama appeared above the Nomu, dislocating its shoulder and causing it to scream in pain before unleashing a flurry of punches. The Nomu was sent flying away, and Itama's light green eyes focused intently on it. He pondered how the creature still possessed chakra, the very essence that should have faded long ago. He shook his head, knowing he needed to solve that mystery later. The Nomu was releasing raw, unstable chakra, launching powerful attacks that could endanger lives. Itama knew he had to finish this quickly. Izuku charged toward the Nomu, summoning a wooden spike from his palm. He broke it off and hurled it at the Nomu, piercing its right bicep. The creature bellowed in pain, but Itama was not done. He began performing hand signs, culminating in a powerful attack. A wave of fire surged toward the Nomu, engulfing its body and causing its skin to burn. The intense heat melted its flesh, filling the air with a strong, acrid smell. As the flames subsided, the Nomu was left in a severely damaged state, with only muscle fibers and bone visible, its regeneration slowly attempting to heal the wounds. Itama then executed the wood release, wooden dragon, technique. The ground shook violently as it cracked open, revealing a massive wooden dragon that emerged from the earth. Its piercing yellow eyes locked onto the Nomu before it charged, ensnaring the creature like a snake capturing its prey. The Nomu roared in desperation, trying to escape but to no avail. It unleashed all its chakra in a futile attempt to break free, only for the dragon to absorb its energy, causing the Nomu to weaken further. Eventually, the 𝗵𝗍 collapsed, unable to continue the fight. Victory was achieved. Shigaraki, initially stunned, quickly transformed his astonishment into anger, scratching his neck in frustration. He declared that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had cheated and rushed toward him, but halted when the entrance burst open to reveal All Might and Tornado. Tenya Ida announced the arrival of reinforcements, with the teachers and principal from U. standing behind him. Nizu commanded everyone to assist the students, and the teachers nodded in agreement. Shigaraki, realizing the situation was dire, ordered 𝗬𝗓𝗓 to facilitate their escape. However, Snipe shot at his legs, and while the cowboy hero fired more bullets, Toby warped them away. 13 used her quirk to turn the bullets to dust, prompting Aizawa to express alarm at the unexpected teleportation abilities. 𝗬𝗓𝗓 shielded Shigaraki while creating a portal, but 13's attempts to stop them proved ineffective. Before they vanished, Shigaraki glared at All Might, vowing that although he had failed this time, he would return to eliminate him. He then turned his gaze to 𝗧𝗵𝗲, warning him to be cautious, as their next encounter would not end well for him. After issuing his threats, Shigaraki, Toby, and 𝗬𝗓𝗓 disappeared without a trace. In an unknown location resembling a bar, Shigaraki collapsed to the ground, exhausted from the battle. He lamented the injuries to his legs and the loss of his underlings, including the defeated 𝗵𝗍. Frustrated, he expressed his anger at their failure and the strength of the brat who had bested them. A voice from the other end responded, indicating that they had not been adequately prepared. Another voice chimed in, noting that they were fortunate to have failed under the League of Villains name rather than their own. Shigaraki inquired about the creature they had created, and 𝗬𝗓𝗓 confirmed that it had been defeated. This revelation shocked the others, who expressed their disbelief that the 𝗵𝗍, designed to rival All Might, had been bested. 𝗬𝗓𝗓 clarified that it was not All Might who had defeated the 𝗵𝗍, but rather a student from U. Shigaraki, agitated, explained how easily the boy had dispatched the creature. Toby, who had remained silent until now, spoke up, describing the boy's incredible abilities, including his mastery of fire and wood, as well as his remarkable agility and strength. All for One inquired about the child's name, and Toby revealed that he was known as 𝗧𝗵𝗲 Senju. The power of such a young student intrigued All for One, who ordered his subordinates to keep tabs on 𝗧𝗵𝗲, considering him a potential threat. 𝗬𝗓𝗓 acknowledged the command, bowing slightly, while All for One reassured Shigaraki that this was merely a setback in their larger plans, emphasizing that he would eventually become the face of evil. The world would soon recognize the name of Tamura Shigaraki. As the television switched off, leaving the three alone, 𝗬𝗓𝗓 took Shigaraki to the medical room to tend to his injuries. Meanwhile, Toby sat in solitude, reflecting on the situation. He let out a sardonic chuckle, contemplating the bitter irony of fate. Who could have imagined that another Senju would still be alive after all these centuries? The single eye hole in his mask revealed a red eye with 3 tomos in the iris. He looked forward to the battles that awaited them in the future, hoping that Senju 𝗧𝗵𝗲 would not disappoint him. In the U.A. meeting room, the teachers and principal gathered alongside All Might to hear the latest reports from Tsukachi. He explained that their investigators were attempting to uncover information about the so-called League of Villains. Progress had been made, but they had yet to find any information on Shigaraki. They had searched their records for men in their 20s or 30s with a disintegration quirk, but none matched Shigaraki or 𝗬𝗓𝗓. It was clear they were not ordinary citizens and were using aliases, making them difficult to track down. Vlad King frowned at this revelation, expressing his dissatisfaction. He stated that they needed to find a way to track them down. Snipe interjected, mentioning that he had shot their ringleader, but once he healed, he might attempt another stunt. Toshinori shook his head in disagreement, noting that the reports indicated Shigaraki did not seem like the type to act recklessly. The attack at the USJ was too bold. No sane person would attempt such a thing. Shigaraki had boasted about his presence there and spoke of 𝗵𝗍's many quirks but never mentioned his own. When things did not go his way, he appeared visibly upset, almost throwing a tantrum. Toshinori concluded that Shigaraki had the personality of a spoiled man-child. Vlad responded that a man-child with incredible power was still a significant concern. Midnight suggested that it was possible Shigaraki had never received the quirk counseling that students typically undergo in elementary school. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 dismissed this idea, stating it did not matter. Nizu, reviewing the reports in his hands, felt a sense of weariness. His concerns were primarily focused on the masked man in black robes with a red cloud insignia. He expressed that while he believed Shigaraki was a notable threat, his greater concern was 𝗬𝗵𝗏. According to the reports, some of the villains involved in the USJ incident had connections to gang affiliations, hired henchmen, and serious crimes. This revelation widened the eyes of the teachers. Tsukachi nodded, shifting through papers, noting that those individuals were not recruited by Shigaraki but by the masked figure known as 𝗬𝗵𝗏. Tashinori inquired about any clues to identify 𝗬𝗵𝗏. Tsukachi shook his head, indicating that, like the previous two, 𝗬𝗵𝗏 was likely an alias. The villains they interviewed described him as a force of nature, powerful in his own right, with a way of captivating others and drawing them into his ruthless plans. Țămintas frowned, realizing that the disarming of alarms at the USJ was likely no coincidence. 𝗬𝗵𝗏 had anticipated that the alarms would attract the attention of every teacher in the school. Hound Dog noted that 𝗬𝗵𝗏 must have known Class 1A would be at the USJ alongside two pro heroes for a field trip. Aizawa pointed out that despite the claims of 𝗬𝗵𝗏's remarkable abilities, he had merely observed from the sidelines during the USJ incident, only intervening when students were in danger or when Itama attacked him. Something about this did not add up. Tashinori expressed concern over 𝗬𝗏's quirks, to which Tsukachi confirmed that he possessed both a permeation quirk and a warping quirk. The atmosphere in the room grew tense, and silence enveloped them, broken only by the sound of a needle dropping. Hound Dog remarked that two quirk users were a rare occurrence. Midnight added that a warping quirk could drastically alter the course of a battle, and combined with a permeation quirk, it was even more formidable. The thought of a villain wielding such power was terrifying. Present might question what role 𝗬𝗵𝗏 played if Shigaraki was the leader and Kurojirai was a follower. Nizu, having listened intently, asserted that 𝗬𝗵𝗏 was likely an instigator, someone who incited action from behind the scenes, acting as a director in the shadows. Tsukachi nodded in agreement, expressing concern over how 𝗬𝗵𝗏 managed to persuade such dangerous criminals. Criminals were increasingly feeling the pressure from a world filled with heroes, which could explain their quick support for a simple-minded villain like Shigaraki. Vlad King acknowledged the logic in this assessment. 𝗧𝗵𝗏 shifted in his chair, noting that many villains were searching for a cause to rally behind. Midnight narrowed her eyes, questioning what they could do to stop them. Tsukachi responded that thanks to the heroes, they had time to devote to this case. They would expand their investigation to find those responsible for the attack. Nizu emphasized the need to prepare to prevent another incident like this from occurring. With the youth sports festival approaching, he believed it would be the perfect opportunity to demonstrate that 𝗬𝗏 would not back down. Everyone nodded in agreement and soon departed to prepare for the upcoming week, while Tsukachi headed to his department to work on the case. The only ones left in the meeting room were him and Tashinori, both standing in silence. Tashinori tapped his fingers nervously, feeling the weight of their rocky friendship since Izuku's disappearance. He was unsure of what to say or if his words would even matter. Nizu, having conjured tea from seemingly nowhere, took a sip and asked how Tashinori was feeling. Tashinori's posture slumped as he began to respond honestly. His face appeared hollow and sunken, a reflection of past events. He expressed his exhaustion, admitting that he not only failed as a hero to his missing son but also as a father who should have been there for him. He acknowledged his blindness to the truth, realizing he had paid a heavy price for it. Regret filled him every day. He wished he could go back in time and change everything. He felt he had let down his son, and if his mentor were still alive, she would surely be disappointed in him. A single tear slipped from his eye as he contemplated the weight of his failures. Nizu, sipping from his cup, offered wise words about the impossibility of changing the past and the importance of looking toward the future. Determined, he declared that he would find his son no matter the cost, even if it meant facing his son's hatred for the rest of his life. 𝗍𝗂 noted the conviction in his voice and hummed in approval. Changing the subject, 𝗍𝗂 inquired about his daughter, Izumi. At the mention of her name, his entire demeanor shifted. He sighed deeply and rubbed his tired face with his fingers. He honestly admitted that things were horrible with Izumi. He felt lost, as she was becoming increasingly erratic and temperamental, and he feared it would only worsen. He expressed concern that the power of one for all seemed to be rejecting her. No matter how hard she trained, it felt as if the ability was denying her. 𝗍𝗂 considered this, reflecting on her personality. He then mentioned the possibility of returning one for all to Mirio Togata, Nitai's successor, which 𝗍𝗂 approved of, recognizing Mirio's potential. He also had another candidate in mind but chose not to reveal it just yet. He shared his frustration about trying to help Izumi, recounting how he had sent her to various therapists and even a witch doctor, but nothing had worked. He felt that if her behavior continued, he might have to consider more drastic measures. 𝗍𝗂 raised an eyebrow, questioning what was stopping him. He sighed in defeat, explaining that Inko, Izumi's mother, was too stubborn to acknowledge her daughter's need for help. Their disagreements had escalated to the point where they were now living apart. 𝗍𝗂 stood up and made his way to the door, pausing to remind him that while his actions toward Izuku were unacceptable, his efforts to make amends were a positive step forward. With that, he left the skeleton man alone with his thoughts. At U.T. A week had passed since the USJ incident, and the students were given time off to recover. Upon their return to class, they speculated about who their substitute teacher would be while Aizawa continued his recovery. One student excitedly mentioned their brief appearance on the news, though another doubted anyone noticed them. They joked about their newfound celebrity status, reflecting on the chaos of the battle against the villain. The memory of the Nomu's overwhelming power lingered in their minds, a raw and chaotic force that had terrified those nearby. They all wondered how strong 𝗧𝗵𝗲 truly was, their gazes shifting toward him as he quietly meditated, seemingly unfazed by their chatter. Mina attempted to redirect the conversation, asking who would teach them in Aizawa's absence. Just then, the classroom door opened, revealing Aizawa, wrapped in bandages. The students were stunned, except for Izumi, who maintained a nonchalant demeanor. Aizawa dismissed their concerns about his health, stating that their fight was not over yet. His serious gaze fell on 𝗧𝗵𝗲, acknowledging his disobedience but also commending him for incapacitating the villain until help arrived. He warned 𝗧𝗵𝗲 to think before acting in the future. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 nodded in understanding. Aizawa then informed the class that the 𝗬𝗲𝗄 sports festival was approaching. The students erupted in excitement, with one expressing their surprise at Aizawa's dramatic entrance. The atmosphere shifted as they began to look forward to the upcoming festival, though Kaminari raised a question about the intensity of their teacher's approach. They had just faced villains the previous week, and Jiraiya expressed concern about starting the festival so soon after the incident. Aizawa explained that the administration believed it was a good opportunity to demonstrate that the threat had been addressed and that the school was safer than ever. He added that every hero in the country would be present, providing students with a chance to be noticed by pro-heroes, making cancellation unfeasible due to a few villains. Mineta, feeling uneasy, questioned the decision, wondering if it was truly a good idea. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 observed Mineta's apprehension and reminded him that the festival was crucial for every student, as it offered a rare opportunity to be scouted by pro-heroes. Momo chimed in, emphasizing that this was a significant chance for anyone, including the top 10 students. Mineta, still anxious, retorted that it was easy to talk about opportunities when one's safety was at stake. Aizawa explained that the sports festival was the most viewed event in their world, having replaced the Olympic Games in popularity since the emergence of quirks. He stressed that this event was vital for anyone aspiring to become a pro-hero, as joining a renowned agency could lead to greater experience and recognition. The students reacted with a mix of determination and excitement. Some, like Katsumi and Bakugo, smirked confidently, while Izumi appeared bored yet amused. Todoroki and Shoka maintained neutral expressions, and 𝗧𝗵𝗲 remained calm. As the school day ended, the homeroom teachers left, and the students began chatting among themselves. 𝗬𝗧𝗧𝗏 opened the door to find the hallway crowded with students from various courses, blocking Class 1A's exit. She questioned what was happening, while Iida inquired about the intentions of the other students. Mineta, overwhelmed by the crowd, expressed his fear. Izumi brushed past Mineta, kicking him lightly as she did. She explained that it was obvious the other students were there to investigate them, as they were the class that had survived a real encounter with villains. She walked toward the door, leaving Mineta groaning in pain from her kick. She looked back at the crowd with a bored expression, asserting that they should recognize what a future pro-hero looks like and urged them to move aside. Iida chastised Izumi for her dismissive attitude, hoping that her words wouldn't offend anyone. Just then, a boy with striking purple eyes and messy purple hair pushed through the crowd, introducing himself as Hitoshi Shinso. He asked if Izumi was always like this, and her classmates nodded in agreement, having quickly learned about her personality. Tatama, observing the interaction, felt compelled to speak up. He defended Izumi, clarifying that she did not represent Class 1A's views. He warned Shinso to choose his words carefully, pointing out that his bold statements suggested they deserved the attack they had faced. Itama recounted the struggles they endured during the incident at the USJ, highlighting the efforts of his classmates who had fought hard to earn their places at U. He emphasized that anyone wishing to enter the hero course would need to prove themselves during the sports festival, as Class 1A would not back down. His serious tone captured the attention of everyone in the hallway, and his classmates felt a surge of pride for their representative. Itama locked eyes with Shinso, accepting the challenge he had posed. Shinso smirked, intrigued by the upcoming competition, and promised to see them at the festival before departing. As the crowd dispersed, Tetsu from Class 1B approached Itama, apologizing for his earlier comments. He admitted that Itama's words had changed his perspective on Class 1A. Itama had initially misjudged his classmates, but he was quick to apologize. He complimented the student from Class 1B on their hairstyle, which prompted a cheerful response. Tetsu expressed gratitude for the compliment before taking his leave. Suddenly, Itama was enveloped in hugs from Mina and Toru, who expressed their appreciation for his defense of them. Mina beamed as she praised him for changing others' perceptions. Itama, feeling a sense of camaraderie, reassured them that it was no trouble at all. Unbeknownst to him, a girl with green, vine-like hair observed from a distance. She leaned against the wall, her hands in a prayer position, a mysterious light illuminating her face and casting a rosy hue on her cheeks. Her heart raced as she realized it was Itama. Ibra felt an unfamiliar warmth and calmness wash over her whenever he was near, a feeling she had never experienced before. She silently prayed for forgiveness, acknowledging her feelings for him. As the sports festival approached, fireworks lit up the sky, while reporters gathered outside U.Hi, eager for the event. One female reporter commented on the heightened security following a recent villain attack, while her cameraman noted that many believed the festival should be postponed. The reporter, however, saw the controversy as an opportunity to boost ratings. Inside the campus, stalls filled with food and souvenirs buzzed with activity. A trio of heroes approached a food stall, where MT Lady ordered takoyaki. A fan recognized her, causing a blush to spread across his cheeks. When she realized she didn't have her money, the vendor generously offered her the food for free, much to the disapproval of her colleagues. As they wandered the campus, 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗎 expressed his longing to scout the area, but Death Arms reminded him of their security duties. Any lady took a bite of her snack, noting the presence of many pro-heroes at the event. In the waiting room for Class 1A, students prepared for the festival. Some stretched, while others chatted or waited anxiously for their names to be called. Mina expressed her disappointment at not being able to wear her hero costume, and Toru echoed her sentiments. Wajiro suggested that Toru might stand out too much, which caused her to slump in disappointment. Sato wondered about the first round of the competition, and Tokoyami reassured everyone that they would face whatever came their way. Tsuyu expressed her nerves about her family watching on television, prompting 𝗬𝗧𝗏 to share her own anxiety about her parents. Just then, Iida entered, announcing that it was time to prepare for the arena. As the students readied themselves, Shoto approached 𝗬𝗲 with a serious demeanor. He acknowledged 𝗬𝗲's strength and skill, referencing the recent events at USJ, but declared his intention to defeat him. The declaration stunned their classmates, and Kaminari whispered to Shiro about the tension brewing within their class. Kirishima attempted to defuse the situation, urging Todoroki to remember their friendship, but Todoroki brushed him off, stating he was focused on being the best. As he turned to leave, Shoka called out to him, but 𝗬𝗲's serious gaze caught her attention, reminding her of someone from her past. 𝗬𝗲 accepted Todoroki's challenge, warning him that he should not underestimate the other competitors. He advised Todoroki to give his all, as anything less would lead to failure. Todoroki glared but remained silent, while the others processed 𝗬𝗲's words. Izumi felt irritation at Todoroki's focus on 𝗬𝗲 rather than her. Finally, 𝗬𝗲 rallied everyone, urging them to show the world the new generation of heroes as they exited the room together. "And you too, bustling crowd of the press." President Mick's voice resonated through the intercoms around the stadium as the audience erupted in cheers. Some heroes began chanting, and the crowd quickly followed suit. This year, they were set to witness one of the most significant and thrilling performances in the history of sports festivals. President Mike had just one question for everyone. Were they ready? The entire stadium roared in response, both fans and heroes shouting with excitement. Fantastic, sports fans. It was time to welcome the first group. Everyone knew them as the class that had faced villains at the USJ. A round of applause was in order for the Hero Corps students with hearts of steel and fiery determination, Class 1A. The fans cheered as Class 1A made their entrance, led by 𝗬𝗲. The green-haired students scanned the crowd, feeling the weight of thousands of eyes upon them. "But I never expected so many people," Mina thought, her body tensing under the scrutiny. Tenya nodded in agreement, hoping they could perform their best despite the many eyes watching. Kirishima chuckled lightly, noting how President Mike had a talent for lifting spirits, though it made him a bit nervous. He glanced at Bakugo, curious about his feelings. Bakugo, unfazed, declared he was only focused on winning. Katsumi observed her friend Izumi, who had been unusually quiet in the waiting room. Izumi's expression was tense, her hair casting shadows over her eyes, and her pace quickened as she breathed heavily. Katsumi asked if she was okay, to which Izumi replied tersely, "Just peachy," clearly not wanting to discuss it further. They may not stand out much, but this class was filled with talent. The audience cheered again as Class 1B entered the field, their emotions a mix of tension and determination. Following them were the students from the General Studies course, Classes C, D, and E. Shinso led the way, and while some in the audience clapped, others remained silent. Next came the students from the support course, Classes F, G, and H. As they emerged, a pink-haired girl with quirky glasses smiled brightly, though the audience's reaction was lukewarm, with some clapping half-heartedly. Finally, it was time for the business course, Classes I, J, and K. By this point, the arena was silent, with only a few pitying claps echoing through the stands. The students exchanged glances, scowling at the lack of enthusiasm directed their way. Meanwhile, in a familiar bar, Shigaraki watched the sports festival alongside Kurogyari, Toby, and a man resembling a Venus flytrap, whose skin was split in black and white, adorned with a black cloak featuring a red cloud insignia. The flytrap complained about being hungry, though he was merely bored, which began to irritate Shigaraki. He urged Kurogyari to silence the chatterbox. The flytrap, known as Zetsu, playfully pouted and turned to Toby, who was focused on the screen. Kurogyari offered Zetsu a drink, which he accepted happily, while Toby continued to observe the green-haired student with keen interest. Now, with every student on the field, one of the teachers approached the podium, the sound of a WHP catching everyone's attention. It was time for the oath. The male audience members flushed red, and even some women were taken aback by the sight of the R-rated heroine, Midnight. Hiro commented on how the first years were missing out, while many male students blushed at her appearance. Kirishima remarked on the appropriateness of her outfit, while Kaminari agreed that it should come with a warning. Tokoyami questioned whether it was suitable for a teacher to dress that way in a school setting. Mineta made an odd noise, his excitement evident. Midnight commanded silence with a snap of her WHP, and then announced that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 Senju from Class 1A would represent the students and deliver a speech. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 blinked in surprise at the mention of his name. Izumi muttered her discontent, while Toru encouraged 𝗧𝗵𝗲, and Momo agreed he would do well. Kirishima placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, advising him to stay calm and be himself. Understood, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 thought as he approached the podium. He stood confidently before the microphone, scanning the students below. Ibra's heart raced at the sight of him, and she let out a small sound of surprise, which caught the attention of her classmates. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 began his speech, sharing his experiences. He spoke about the unfairness of the world, where some were born with powerful quirks while others faced judgment for their unique abilities. He highlighted the struggles of those deemed quirkless, sharing his own painful past filled with hardship and mockery. The audience listened intently, some gasping in shock at his revelations, while others were left in stunned silence. Class 1A in particular felt the weight of his words deeply. They had never realized that their class representative was quirkless, as he had never revealed this fact and was assumed to be naturally strong. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 Senju often pondered what he had done to deserve such treatment. He questioned whether it was punishment or a consequence of his aspirations. He felt that he had committed some sort of offense by wanting to become a hero. He had his reasons for this ambition, just as the students around him and those watching had theirs. He wondered why a dream held by someone without a quirk would be met with discrimination and hostility. Yet, despite everything he had faced, he refused to surrender. His motivation stemmed from his father, a hero who had lost his life shortly before 𝗧𝗵𝗲 entered U. His father had believed that, despite lacking a quirk, 𝗧𝗵𝗲's courage and indomitable spirit burned brighter than any renowned hero's determination. It was not merely about talent or possessing a powerful ability, it was about hard work and striving to be the best. The students behind him had given their all and earned the respect necessary to compete. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 declared his name and his longing to be a hero who saves those in danger and those in need of rescue. He vowed to do his utmost to help anyone who required assistance, as that was the essence of heroism. Even when faced with overwhelming odds, even if the entire world stood against him, he would still aid the innocent. He believed it was the right thing to do, and that was his reason for aspiring to be a hero. Standing before the audience, he urged everyone present to never give up and to give their all. He emphasized that it was not about having a strong quirk but rather about dedication, determination, and the willpower to keep moving forward. As long as one held on to hope, there was always a chance for success. He raised his fist triumphantly, his eyes fixed on the sky, and the stadium fell silent, absorbing his words. Then, applause erupted, growing louder until the entire stadium was filled with cheers. Behind him, his classmates celebrated, some girls even calling out for him to date them, much to the annoyance of a certain student from Class 1B. Izumi watched in disbelief as the crowd praised 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Anger bubbled within her as she clenched her fists, convinced that it should have been her up there. She thought to herself that 𝗧𝗵𝗲 was mistaken. Power was everything in this world, and she would prove it to him. Aizawa, observing from the announcer's area beside present mic, commented on the impact of 𝗧𝗵𝗲's speech, acknowledging its beauty and strength. He smiled beneath his bandages, agreeing with the sentiment. Midnight then addressed the crowd, thanking 𝗧𝗵𝗲 for his courageous speech, which had touched many hearts, including her own. However, she reminded everyone that it was time to begin the festival, announcing the first event, an obstacle race. She explained that all participants would need to run around the stadium, a distance of 4 kilometers, but with a playful twist. While they had to stay on course, they were free to pursue their own strategies. As the gates opened, the students made their way to the starting point. Some stretched and warmed up, while 𝗧𝗵𝗲 looked up to the sky, sending a silent prayer to his father, hoping he was watching over him. As the timer began to count down, the students prepared themselves at the starting line. Some activated their quirks for an advantage, while 𝗧𝗵𝗲 positioned himself as a runner, focused on the task ahead. When Midnight shouted the command to begin, the first round of the race commenced. To be continued.